Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. It's great to be back with you for another edition of our program. Today is December 13th, 2015. Can't believe we're almost through this entire year. It went by very quickly. Today's episode is titled Death of Due Process, Government Watch List. This is episode 99 of On the Move Show. I am your host, Mac Worley III, and this is the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. So we have a whole slew, a whole heap of things we need to get to today. Let's start with our featured topics. I'll go ahead and read them off to you guys here. Our first featured topics, I want to talk about the coming economic collapse with our special guest, Dave. He's the host of X22 Report. It's x22report.com. We're going to be talking about his take on what's going on with the economy, and I think you guys are really going to be interested in that. That's going to be for the first hour of the program. He'll be calling in about 10 minutes into the program here. Our second featured topic of today, we're going to talk about Connecticut's attempt to ban gun sales to those on federal terrorism watch lists. So I want to talk about that. And in addition, I want to talk about why banning people on watch lists is not going to keep us safe, why it hasn't kept us safe in the past. And in addition to that, and more importantly, why it's unconstitutional. And I want to talk a little bit about founders' intent with this. In addition to that, I think one of the most important issues going on right now is the situation in Syria. So I want to talk about the escalating situation there. I want to talk about the heightened tensions between Russia and Turkey. Also, I want to talk about the U.S. and Saudi Arabia's motivations for trying to get Syrian President Bashar al-Assad out of office, out of power in Syria. Why do they want to do that? What is the intention there? And why, furthermore, why does Russia want to keep him in power? So I want to talk about that. In addition to that, how the U.S. is intentionally destabilizing the Middle East in order to secure the US Petrol Dollar. This is essentially what it all boils down to, folks, is the money. The Petrol Dollar. Out of those areas in the Middle East that are producing oil, the U.S. government is actually trying to overthrow governments over there who are willing to trade oil in something else other than the U.S. dollar. And therein lies the problem. Therein lies why we are involved in this conflict and why we want Assad out of power. We're going to get way further into that. Also, I want to talk, if we have time, about Rahm Emanuel's suppression of evidence to win an election in Chicago. And I want to talk about Donald Trump's proposal to ban all Muslims from entering the country. We have a whole lot more to get to other than what we talked about. And feel free, if you have anything that's on your mind that you would like to talk about, feel free to put it on the table here. Give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that is 360-450-5625. You can also, if you don't want to give us a call, you can message us in a variety of ways. You can get us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. Message us at Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. We'll be happy to read your messages live on the air, or you can comment on our event link for the show. One of our many posts we've posted out there. Feel free to do that, and I'll if I can find it, I will message you. I will read your message on the air, and certainly appreciate you guys getting involved with that. So, without further ado, please feel free to check us out at our website, onthemoveshow.com. Please follow us on Spreaker.com/onthemoveshow. And I want to focus on this for 1 second. If you go to Spreaker.com/onthemoveshow, and you follow us there, that does a lot to really help our program. Analytically speaking, the more people that follow us over there, the more people that will see us in search results when they're searching about things like politics or liberty, libertarian, things along those lines. It goes a long way in search results. So you following us actually is a really big way that you can help out the program. All you got to do is go to Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. And on top of that, it will notify you whenever we have a show going on. It'll say, hey, this show is live. Send you an email. That way you don't miss any of our programs. And this will be especially helpful to you if we do some kind of emergency podcast where it's not on a scheduled time and there's just information that I feel that you guys need to get. That would make sure that you don't miss out. So again, that's Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Don't forget to like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And just so you know, we are also on iTunes. So don't forget to follow us there and leave us a review if you like our program. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to our first commercial break of the day. And when we come back, we're going to start diving into some of these featured topics. We may actually talk about some of the things initially here that are not in our featured topics at first, until we get our call from Dave at the X22 report. So anyway, we'll be right back after these messages, folks. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and bring Dave on. He is the host of the X22 Report. That's x22report.com. Hey, Dave, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm actually a really big fan. I found your show not too long ago, and I've just been listening to everything you're saying, and I agree with a lot of what your take on what is going on. So the very first thing I want to get to here is what do you see happening with the economy right now?
Well, I see the economy is not doing as well as the government would like us to think. And I usually like to say government/central bankers. The reason why I say that is because the country is not really run by the president. It's really run by central bankers, corporations. And right now they want us to believe that the economy is doing well. They have this notion that they can trick us with statistical numbers by manipulating unemployment, manipulating GDP, manipulating inflation. And I discuss a lot of this in my reports, where when you look at unemployment, and I know this is all over the corporate media and also the alternative media, where they have people that are not included in the job numbers. And these people, they want to work. They are looking for jobs. A lot of people contact me saying, yes, I am one of those people that I am continually looking for a job, but I can't find one. And they basically, every time they need to fix the numbers, they just drop them off. Same thing with GDP. They include calculations that include health care from Obamacare. They push up the inventory supply to boost the GDP numbers. And they continually manipulate all of this. And when we look at the real economic data with strip malls where stores are going out, we see retail is contracting. Just in the past, I think it was Thursday or Friday, they came out with the retail numbers. They told us that, retail sales are doing very, very well. We're at 0.2%, and we're just doing fantastic here. But what they don't tell you is when you go back in time, retail sales were much higher. If you go back to 2014, if you go back to 2013, 2012, we see retail sales at 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. And what's strange about this is during those times, unemployment was much, much higher. So now they're telling us that unemployment's coming down and retail sales are coming down at the same time, which makes no sense whatsoever, because if more people are working and we're almost at full employment, we should see retails rising. We saw retail rise prior to 2008. So if you go backwards in time, whenever unemployment came down, retail expanded, sales went up, more people had jobs, more people felt comfortable, and the whole thing made sense. Today, the opposite is happening, and this is how we know a lot of this is completely fake, phony, and false, and it really makes no sense whatsoever.
Absolutely. You know, I definitely agree with you that they're cooking books right now in terms of unemployment and job growth as well. One of the things that I'm actually curious what your take on is here is as far as the difference between service industry and other industries that are out there, because the service industry is one of the sectors that has seen an obscene amount of growth recently. And first of all, I'm just curious, what do you think about the kind of jobs, because I've been trying to clarify myself here, I've been trying to research and find out what kind of jobs are in the service industry. First of all, do you know if those are high-paying jobs? What kind of jobs are those?
These are low-paying jobs. A lot of times in the service industry, you're looking at waiters, bartenders, all the lower-paying jobs. And what we're seeing right now is a lot of the manufacturing jobs have been completely lost in this country, and they're being replaced with the service type of jobs. And if we go back to 2008 or a little bit before that, we see about 1.4, 1.5 million manufacturing jobs lost. And from that point going forward, we see 1.4, 1.5 service type of jobs being added. So we're just replacing manufacturing with service type of jobs. The BLS just came out and said, okay, over the next 10 years right now, and I believe their estimate's low, they're saying we're going to lose another 800,000 manufacturing jobs. And these are governmental numbers, but they always kind of give us the low end of it when we're losing jobs. If we're gaining jobs, they always overinflate it. So right now they're telling us almost close to 1 million more jobs are going to be lost in manufacturing. And this economy right now cannot be sustained without manufacturing. We cannot be a consumer-based economy. It just will not work. And this is the biggest problem that we're having in this country right now, because we don't have manufacturing. It's being lost. But with the TPP, there's a clause in the TPP where there's a certain regulation that says they can bring manufacturing workers from other countries into the United States, have them work in the United States, but their pay will be based on their country, which makes no sense to the people that are living here, because how do you compete with that? So that means everyone's going to have to lower their amount of pay that they're getting to meet these people who are going to come into the United States, which brings us into a third world type of nation. And this is what they're setting up right now.
That's a very important point. I would just like to point out that the people who are actually pressing for more relaxation on the workers' visas are the big billionaires on the left, like Bill Gates, for example. He's one of the main proponents of actually giving more work visas to foreigners to come here to do that kind of work. And again, they're getting paid based on their country, as you eloquently pointed out, which, again, how are we to compete when we're highly regulated? And where, again, the left is the very ones who tell us that we have to pay our employees a certain amount. We don't have a right to contract. We can't choose what we're willing to pay, and they can't choose what they're willing to work for. But in terms of other people coming here and doing American jobs, we should be giving more visas out. And the reason why is because these billionaires on the left, they want to exploit these things and make money this way. And they know that they can undercut anyone in the job market out there because no one else can compete. They have a foreign work labor force that no one out there can compete with. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, there's no way that America can compete with the third world nations. And if they continually bring them in, and I mention this a lot about the illegal immigrants coming over the border, and Obama's letting them, just come to the country. They really don't do any checks. And, there's arguments, to and for this. I'm against it, not because they're coming into the country, because I believe this is America, and if you want to come into this country, you want a better life, you should get a better life. But not just jumping over a border fence and saying, okay, now I'm here in America. Because if you're just coming over the fence, there's no reason to have the border. Just let everyone in and say, okay, here we go. Everyone can just come in. There's a reason why we have borders here. But it's this whole thing that they're doing right now is part of the main agenda. And if you really think about it, since 2008, a lot of Americans, and I know a lot of people that went through this, I went through this myself, they lost homes, they lost their wealth, they lost their manufacturing jobs, they lost their everyday job, and a lot of people have part-times or no job right now. They're dependent on the government, and they never really got back on their feet. And the central banking establishment, they know this. And they know they need to keep the economy operating, and they need to keep the economy running. So they've created all these bubbles in the economy, like the student loan bubble, the auto bubble, the stock market bubble, the treasury bond bubble, the housing bubble, you name it. The whole entire economy is driven by the central banking establishment. It's really not driven by the people right now. The people are actually on the sidelines. And they know the people are tapped out at this point, and they need fresh blood in this country. And this is why they're so desperate to bring in more and more people into this country, because it allows them, as soon as they come into this country, they get work permits. They can go ahead and get an auto loan. They can get a student loan. They can work for a corporation, and if people don't know this, that once they go to work for a corporation, right now, as with Obamacare, corporations do not have to pay the $3,000 penalty because these people are not citizens yet, so they can work for the company and they're not penalized. So all of these things together is part of their main agenda to keep these bubbles inflated. And this is why the president, during the elections, waited to sign, I know a lot of people call it his executive order, but it's really a memorandum that he signed, and he waited for after the elections, because when you look at the poll numbers and you look at what people really thought, they were against this. They didn't want illegals, well, now they call them undocumented immigrants. So it's just a play on words. They're illegal. They came over the border, and basically the Obama administration with the Border Patrol, they're allowing them into the country, moving them to different locations so they can go to work. And all of this is part of the main agenda. The TPP is part of their main agenda to bring people in here to keep this system alive. Because you have to remember, GDP basically is based on manufacturing and a working population. And if they can bring these low-paying people into this country, they can keep all of this operating, and they're hoping to keep this going for as long as they can, but I don't think they can, and they know this, and this is why we're moving to a conflict in the Middle East, in the Pacific, and in Europe.
So basically, from what I understand, you're saying that they're using these foreign workers as a way to artificially create a increase in the GDP, because Americans aren't working, we're not producing, but foreigners coming in here getting paid less than what Americans have to be paid at are in fact doing the production in America, and that's actually keeping this GDP artificially stimulated. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this is part of it. It's keeping part of it stimulated, and it allows them to keep the auto loan bubble continually inflating. It allows the student loan bubble continually inflating, because all these people now it's fresh blood, And as they come into the country, they have all these opportunities, and they're bringing fresh people in. The American people, they're tapped out. They have nothing left, and as more and more of these illegals come in, they have the ability to continually inflate these bubbles, because if they didn't bring the illegals in, what would happen is these bubbles would pop. They couldn't continually inflate them anymore, and the whole entire economy would come crashing down. And we're starting to see signs that the retail industry, the housing industry, the auto loan industry is all starting to feel the effect that it's not inflating anymore, and things are starting to fall apart, and it's starting to accelerate. I looked at real estate, and I follow real estate very, very closely, and I compare this to what happened back in 2007, 2008. I know Case-Shiller gives their stats that, yes, prices are going up. Actually, the National Association of Realtors already admitted that prices on homes are starting to fall right now, because what's happening is they were giving this free money, which was created by the central banks, to hedge funds, investment companies. Foreign workers were coming in, blowing up the real estate industry, purchasing homes. I'll give you an example. Hedge funds would come in, and they wouldn't buy one or two houses. They'd buy, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 homes. They'd hold on to them and rent them if they could, to continually pump up the real estate market. Banks were instructed not to foreclose on homes, to keep them off the market, make sure we drive the prices up. And this is why we saw prices in houses go up. And what we're seeing now is the free money is not working. They just can't keep this going. The foreigners that are coming into this country, like China, they are not buying as much anymore. They're actually they decided not to purchase at this time, because what's happening with the yuan and the renminbi, which is becoming a reserve currency. So they're backing off at this point, and the devaluation of the yuan, and this is why they're saying, okay, let's hold off right now. And we're starting to see real estate prices hit the top. Now, this doesn't happen in every city at the same exact time. It happens in different areas, but we're seeing it spread now across the nation, just like we saw back in 2008. And as this spreads, it's going to get worse and worse. And if the Fed decides to raise interest rates, it's going to be a complete and utter disaster, not just in real estate, but auto loans, stock market, treasury bond. It's going to be a complete and utter disaster. And they know this. And this is why they're timing this just right.
Exactly. And I've been saying the same thing. But before we get to the interest rates, I want to really nail this one down here. First of all, I absolutely agree with you in terms of manufacturing being a necessity. What a country produces is basically a direct correlation to how much wealth they have. Wealth is production. You can only make wealth by producing something, either a good or a service. And I absolutely agree with you that we are losing, and the numbers show it. Manufacturing jobs. I'm looking right now at the it's an article on theatlantic.com. It's talking about a comparison between the 1977 recession and June 2015 labor statistics. And it's basically showing that we now have millions less jobs manufacturing in the United States than we did in 1977. In 1977, we had 19.6 million jobs in manufacturing, and now we have 12.3. So there's a big difference here. And one of the things I'm curious about, why do you think that, first of all, I mean, I know this is probably the easiest answer or question you're going to be asked, but why do you think we're losing American jobs, and why are American workers tapped out at this point?
Well, I think most of the corporations, there's so much regulation and so much they need to pay in taxes in this country. They're just offloading all the jobs overseas. We've seen this going all the way back since the late 70s moving forward. And, everyone was warning the entire country at that time that we're losing manufacturing. The middle class will be completely gone. And here we are in 2015 going into 2016, and we see it. It's right in front of our eyes. Everything that everyone talked about from that point going forward has come true. And what we're seeing now is China has become a manufacturing powerhouse, South Korea and Vietnam, and this is where corporations are going, because the workers there, they don't get paid that much compared to what it is here in the United States. There's a huge amount of regulations. There's a huge amount of taxes in the United States. And, you know, to compete, they moved everything offshore. And right now, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a complete and utter destruction of the United States. And this is not going to stop. Just like the BLS said, there's going to be almost another 1 million manufacturing jobs lost. And this is going to accelerate as time goes on. I'm going to say, instead of 1 million, I'm going to say about 2 to 3 million more are going to disappear in the next 10 years if we make it that far going forward.
So, yeah, I don't think that the economy is going to be making it that far as 10 years from now. So let's actually talk about these interest rates here with the Federal Reserve. You have said that you think that the Federal Reserve interest rates, even a marginal increase of even like 0.5% would cause the economy to collapse. And I'm curious, why do you think that would lead to the chain reaction collapse and bursting of the bubble of the stock market and the housing market, auto loan market? How will this actually work out?
Well, let me just clarify. If they decide to raise the interest rates, and I think the Fed right now is stuck right now. They're in a corner, and they have two choices here. One, let it ride, keep it at 0%. But the problem is we've had 0% for 7 years, and they're going to the entire world and the U.S. Is basically going to say, well, wait a minute, we're in a recovery. Unemployment is at 5%, which I think will go to 4.9 maybe before the end of this year as they fix the numbers. We're in full recovery. Why do we need interest rates at 0%? And if they do keep it at 0 or go negative, they're going to lose their credibility. And this is something which this is going to be a problem for them. On the other hand, if they decide to raise interest rates, they're not going to bring it up 0.5% or 1% or 2% or anything like that. They're going to bring it up a tiny bit, maybe 25 basis point, maybe less than that. And basically, if they do that, they want to show the U.S., they want to show the world, look, we are in a recovery. We're able to bring up the interest rates. We did a small little bit of increasing the rates, and you can see nothing fell apart. And if they do this approach, I think this is the sign that they are ready to bring down the economy. And you have to remember, the central banking system is created to spread debt around the world. It's not here to help the American person. It's not here to make you prosper. It's there to make them wealthy. By spreading the debt, people owe them interest. With all of this paper money, they can go out and purchase real assets, land, oil, gold, things like that. And right now, we are in a world where we are flooded with debt. It cannot be sustained. They know this. This is why they're talking about a wealth tax of 10%. This is why they're trying to figure out ways of how the people can pay down this debt for them. And their plan right now, when I look at this, is to maybe raise the interest rates when they're ready by a little bit, which will be the signal to show you that everything is recovering, and they'll try to prove that everything is recovering. But really what they're doing is they're setting it up to fail, because the next go-around, which they'll start talking about as soon as they raise the interest rates, the next go-around of rates will never happen, because what will happen instead of that is some type of an event to take all eyes off the central bankers and put it on another group or a country, because they don't want to be blamed for this system coming down, because in their minds, they want to reset the entire global system. And this is their whole push, because they realize this fiat system has been going for 40 to 45 years or so, since 1971. So I guess it's like 45, 46 years now. It's at its end right now. There's nothing left. They can't maintain it. This is why we're at 0% interest rates. This is why Europe is going negative, because they have no choice at this point. It's a dead-end street. This is the system, the fiat system, loaning money out with interest does not work. It's a central banking scam. And right now, they know this. And if they raise the interest rates, it's a signal to everyone, and I've said this many times, that they will start bringing down the economy, just like they did back in 2008, just like they did in 2001, all the way back to 1929. They know exactly what they're doing. I mean, you have to remember, you go back to 2008, they told us, and this is coming from the Fed, that they weren't forecasting any type of recession in the year that we had the stock market crash and we had a recession. So they know exactly what's going on. They know exactly what they have to do, and they'll always lie to the people until the very end.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you as far as the whole thing being, first of all, it's essentially a Ponzi scheme with the people at the top profiting off of the labor of others. But we got to cut to a commercial break. We'll be back with more from with Dave from the X22 Report. That's x22report.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back, and I want to talk with Dave a little bit more about this possible event of what may be happening that could shift our attention away from the economic collapse to come. So don't go anywhere, gang. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. We are still with Dave from the X22 Report. That's x22report.com. Hey, Dave, do you guys have any social media, other websites that you want to promote? Anything going on?
X22report.com is my main website. I have the YouTube channel, which is X22 Report. I also have the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, and that is where I interview different guests on that channel. And that's I have a new website called News Sentinel. That's NEWZSENTINEL.com, and that website is bringing in different news sources, about 265 news sources from around the world, not corporate media, to tell you what's going on in the world, and it's continually running. It's all streaming news coming in all the time.
Are you on social media at all, like Facebook, Twitter, anything like that?
I'm not on Facebook, but I do have a Twitter, which is just X22 Report.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get back to what we were talking about here. We were talking about is the interest rates and how you and I both believe that the economy is basically poised to collapse. The interest rates are just one small aspect of the Fed's basically telling all the investors, get ready, this whole house of cards is about to come tumbling down. the Ponzi scheme is about to be up, and they're going to reset to whatever their next scheme is. So I made a post a little while ago here, and it said, I was talking about the way I see things happening here. There are a few dominoes that have yet to fall. The first one is the Federal Reserve will raise the interest rates, which will slowly cause the housing and stock market bubble to collapse. America will be attacked again by ISIS, and I was referring to the California attack, but the attack will be bigger and be blamed for causing the economic collapse. Calls for boots on the ground in Syria will to destroy ISIS will drag us into this regional conflict's full swing. Tensions between Russia and America / NATO will increase and will eventually lead us into World War III as the U.S. backs Russia into a corner. So what are your thoughts on this prediction? I'm hoping I'm wrong, but what do you think about this?
I actually agree with it. The reason why I agree with all this is, and I'll explain myself here, is that we have to go back in time a little bit, go back to 1971, because what has happened is in the Middle East, when we were coming off the gold standard back in 1971, the Middle East was set up to basically support the dollar. And to support it, they created the petrodollar, where these Middle Eastern countries would pump their oil and they would sell all the oil using the dollar. And fast forward to today, what we're seeing is the United States right now is losing control of the Middle East. We see in Yemen right now, we see Houthis who want their country back. We see in Libya, there's an actual elected parliament that is housed in Tripoli, and the U.S. and the other coalition forces are trying to basically work out terms to have a unity government. I don't know if this is actually going to work. Lebanon right now is in the midst of having problems. There are people in the country that do not want the United States there. They don't want the puppet government that was installed in that country. And then we have the problem with Iraq and Syria. In Syria, the United States has been trying to get into Syria for quite a while, since I think 2011 right now. And what we're seeing is that all of these countries need to be maintained because the petrodollar keeps the system operational. And right now in Libya, the elected government there is selling the oil, not using the dollar. And this is a problem because if people are not using the petrodollar to make the sale of oil, the reserve currencies of all these countries that are holding the dollar, they don't need them. And they'll send them back to the United States, which will devalue the dollar. So this is why we have troops in Yemen, in Libya, in Lebanon, and in Iraq. And to keep this system going, you have to remember the Federal Reserve, their whole system is based on debt. So they need more and more debt to keep the system operational. This is why they're making their move into other countries like Syria and then eventually Iran. Again, these two places have oil. They also want to build a pipeline through Syria up into Europe so they can supply Europe with natural gas. And all of this is being done to support the petrodollar. It has nothing to do with freedom. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with them hating our way of lives. Well, now that we're bombing them so much, they might hate us for all of these things. But this isn't the real reason. The whole reason for all of this is for the central bankers to keep their system operational. And what we're seeing right now in Syria is that the United States has been fighting this war for a very long time. They want Assad removed, and they tried many different tactics to try to remove him. And the goal is always the same: remove Assad. No matter what else is happening there, that's always the goal. So if we go back to 2013, we had that sarin gas scare where the United States brought in all the different aircraft carrier strike groups into the Mediterranean. They didn't want to bring troops into Syria. They just wanted to bomb Syria and be the air cover for the Free Syrian Army. Well, that fell apart because Putin kind of stepped in. The poll numbers didn't show that Americans wanted us to go into Syria, even though the U.S. government and the corporate media were trying to make it a really big deal that he's using sarin gas. And then it was proved later on that he was not the one using sarin gas, because what happened during that period, Assad and Putin invited the UN Security Council into the country to basically investigate another sarin gas attack, and they housed him in a hotel. And on that same day or a day after, there was a sarin gas attack. Now, why in the world would they invite the UN Security Council in there to do an investigation and use sarin gas? It makes no sense. And then MIT did a calculation of where the missile, the sarin gas missile, was shot from, and where Assad's troops were stationed, it was impossible, and the trajectory came from the Free Syrian Army. And then later on, Assad found all the sarin gas inside of caves. So that whole thing completely fell apart. The U.S. said, okay, listen, we'll make this deal. He has to get rid of his chemical weapons, but we knew this wasn't the end of it. We knew this was just a way of stalling so they can think of a whole new idea. So they decided to have the Geneva I, Geneva II talks during the year of 2014 in February going into April. And the only thing that was on the agenda was to have Assad removed. And he said, absolutely not. There's no force that can remove me except the people of Syria. And then there was an election in Syria in June of 2014. And 87 to 89% of his people voted for him. They wanted him back in power. And all of a sudden, we had the Islamic State appear out of nowhere. Well, they really didn't appear out of nowhere. They were being trained in Jordan. They were being trained in Qatar. They were being trained in Turkey. And since Assad won the election, they released the Islamic State because this was the perfect weapon to get into Syria, because a terrorist group doesn't abide by governmental laws or international laws, so it's absolutely perfect. So they had the Islamic State move into Iraq to cause chaos, and that would be their base of operation, to have the supplies go through Iraq into Syria, and they would use the Islamic State to basically fight Assad. And you have to remember, the Islamic State is the proxy army of the United States government, the coalition forces, and Israel. And they're using this force to go after Assad alongside the Free Syrian Army, because every time the Free Syrian Army was trained, new soldiers came in, they automatically defected right over to the Islamic State. So this whole thing was planned from the beginning, and their plan was to create these safe zones inside of Syria where they can say, okay, this portion of Syria no longer belongs to Assad. This will be a safe zone area. The Islamic State owns this area. Well, of course, they'll call it the Free Syrian Army. And they would be able to bring troops into this area because it no longer belongs to Assad, Syria. And this whole thing completely fell apart because Putin and Russia, I should say, and China said, listen, why don't you invite us to help? We'll help fight terrorism. We don't want terrorism in this world. Let us help. Well, they didn't want Russia. They didn't want China because their mission was a little bit different. Their mission was to get Assad. Assad has economic ties to Russia. Assad has economic ties to the military of Russia, and Russia does support Syria. Not specifically Assad, but he is the president right now. And right now, the United States and the coalition forces decided to go into Syria without the permission of Assad. This is a sovereign country. They broke international law. Russia was invited into Syria to help fight the terrorism. And Russia continually says, listen, we're here to fight terrorism. Let us help. And, of course, the United States, they don't want anything to do with Russia right now, basically because later on, most likely we'll be going to war with Russia. Mm-hmm. And at this point, what we're seeing is the conflict that is building inside of Syria right now. And people say to me, oh no, Russia, they want war with us. They want to fight. Well, truthfully, if Russia really wanted war with the United States, Putin had so many opportunities that he could have done this a long time ago. He could have done it back in 2013. Instead of brokering that deal where Assad was going to remove his chemical weapons, he could have just went in with his troops and we could have had World War III then. He could have done it in Ukraine. He could have said, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm bringing my troops in. I'm going to protect the southeastern Crimea, and I'm going to start World War III. Why did he push the Minsk II ceasefire agreement? There was no reason. The Minsk I and the Minsk II. There was no reason to do this if he really wanted war at this time. If you notice, the United States never talked about peace in Ukraine. They never pushed forward a peace deal. They never said anything about peace. And we can see right now, all of this is building right now because the entire system that the private Western central banks have created is completely falling apart. And if they do not get some type of war started, this whole thing will be blamed on them. And with this war, in their psychopathic minds, they believe that even if it goes nuclear, they'll emerge from their bunkers and they'll restart the system. And this is their plan.
Something that I would agree. It is part of the plan. If you subscribe to, and I've never really been one of the conspiratorial types. I've never been one to believe in New World Order. I thought that maybe there are some people who are in support and openly. So there's lots of people who are openly in support of a global government to prevent war, but a nuclear war, I think, would help create that movement to actually give it life, because if there is a major exchange between two global powers with nuclear weapons, there is going to be a movement of people who are saying never again, we can never allow this again, and the only way that they can do that is to have some global authority that can somehow create some kind of international pressure or control mechanism, which will eventually grow as governments do. Just look at how our federal government started to take away the sovereignty of the states. That would be the same thing in that regard. That they'll create something that has authority over all of the countries in the world, and then suddenly that'll grow into a global government which has control over every aspect of human life. So, I absolutely agree with you that I want to focus here specifically on the debt situation that we have, because I think our audience would benefit from your insight on this. Can you explain to me what's going on with China and how they're no longer buying U.S. debt?
Yeah, basically what's happening right now, and we talked about manufacturing before, China is a manufacturing powerhouse. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, they have manufacturing. And if we go back to World War II, after the war, what country had manufacturing power? It was the United States. And right now, what we're seeing is everything flowing from west to east. And I talk about China, I talk about Russia, and I have no allegiance to Russia or China. My allegiance is to the United States, which doesn't mean I'm which does not mean I support the government. I support the government if they work for the people. I support the people of the United States. I support the Constitution. But what we're seeing right now, and when I talk about China and Russia, we're seeing everything flow from west to east. And we've been seeing this for many, many years, manufacturing flowing to the east. We're seeing the reserve currency right now moving from the west to the east. This is why, at this point, the IMF has given the green light for the yuan/renminbi to become a reserve currency and be included in the SDR basket. This is the first stage of China having a reserve currency. And during this time, before this, countries like the UK, Australia, Switzerland, many of the European countries, they've been setting up bilateral trade agreements with China. And they've been setting up clearinghouses to work with the yuan. The only country that has not is the United States. So what we're seeing right now is everything moving from west to east. Now, does this mean it's good? Does this mean this is the way everyone wants it? What I think is happening right now is the central banks of central banks, they realize, and there's many different private Western central banks. It's not just, the Fed. That's one part. There's the ECB, and then there's the hierarchy of the central bank. And they realize, and they have no allegiance to any country or to people. They don't care about that. They don't care what country or where they are. It makes no difference as long as they can have their central banking system, because it allows them to create currency out of thin air, and they give this currency to the governments, and eventually they bankrupt countries, and they're able to take their assets. They're interested in their assets. And what we're seeing right now is they know the system is dying. They know there's too much debt. They know the system is only designed to last 40 to 45 years and not go any further than this. And this is why they're making their move to move everything over to the east now and away from the west. And this is why you see the TPP. This is why you see all these things are coming out right now, because eventually what's going to happen is the United States is going to become a third world nation. And to make this transition, they just can't do it. They just can't say, hey, you know what we're going to do right now? We decided that the United States is no longer going to be the reserve currency. We're going to move everything over to China right now and Russia, and they're going to be the reserve currency. They'll be creating the currency. They'll be making all the monetary laws right now, and everything's going to flow to them. Because the people of the United States are going, hey, what just happened here? I don't understand this. And the Fed doesn't want to give up its power. The government employees do not want to give up their power. So it just cannot happen this way. It wouldn't make people would scratch their heads like, what just happened here? So the only way to make this transition, just like they did in World War II, because you have to remember, England had the reserve currency before World War II. It switched to the United States. Mm-hmm. We're getting ready for another switch. Does it mean it's going to be good? In the beginning, it will be fine because the system will just start out. But as we go further, and it'll be backed by gold. This is why Russia and China have been basically purchasing huge amounts of gold, because eventually what's going to happen is they're going to have to back their currency with gold to give it stability. Just like the United States back in World War II took the gold from all the other countries and they created stability after the war. And the United States had the manufacturing. The opposite's true now. The United States has no manufacturing. The United States has no gold. And we have this huge amount of debt which cannot be sustained. China is manufacturing. Russia has the oil. And everything is moving over to that area. And the central bankers are just moving everything from here to there. That's all that's happening right now.
And they're going to create the new system in which they set up again for what, another 45 years or so until that one collapses?
Yeah, we'll probably be on the gold standard for like 40 to 45 years, and then eventually what they do is they take us off the gold standard. It's the same pattern over and over and over, and they take us off the gold standard. They're able to create as much currency as possible. The system starts breaking down, and then they pick a new area. And they always have to create, villains. They always have to create a group that they're going after to make sure they have the chaos and make sure they have the whole situation created where people will fight for certain causes. Like in World War II, it was the Jewish population that was the population that was being put down. This time, it's the Muslims, and the enemy will be Russia and China. And this is what we're seeing right now. It's the same. Basically, it's the same story over and over and over and over, and they just continually do it.
So, if we're talking about the repetition of cycles here, would you say that the Nazi Party in Germany was the equivalent of what ISIS is in terms of the United States not getting involved or allowing it to grow into a point of where they could utilize it for that big economic event or that big, the war type event that would allow the economy to actually shift? Would you think that would be the same part of the cycle, or is that something different?
Yeah, I would say so. I say they let it grow. They fostered it. They wanted to get bigger and bigger, just like they're doing today. I mean, the whole thing, if we look at the Islamic State today, what is the president doing about it? Not much. He keeps telling us they're contained. I mean, even though it's an internal force controlled by the United States, they're not doing anything to stop it. Why? They want the Islamic State to grow. They control them. They pay them. They bring them military assets, ammunition. They want this to happen. They need this to happen. And think about this. For us to go to war, they can't come out and say, listen, this is what you're fighting for. You're fighting for these guys right here. They're the central bankers. And you're going to be fighting for paper and ink. Are you willing to die for this? Are you willing to allow your children, your cousin, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your aunt go to war for these people? No. Everyone be like, no, I'm not going to war for that. What are you, crazy? But if they can create an instance where they put fear into the people and they scare them enough, they will go to war if somebody attacks the United States.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree.
And this is what we're seeing right now. This is the beginning stages.
Yeah, and we can see the media spooling up as far as, anti-Russian propaganda, essentially. There's been more and more articles in the news that are, positioning us in an oppositional way to Russia, and I can see it leading us. I mean, I honestly believe that we're in the next Cold War right now. We're already there, but this one is not going to end in the way the last one did, because we could beat them economically. We could let them drive their economy into the dirt, because we knew that we weren't on the gold standard, and we could just print money and digitize and do whatever we needed to do to keep spending so that they would have to spend equal amounts. So, I absolutely agree. But this time we don't have that situation. Now our economy is already teetering on the brink, and will be the ones to collapse instead of Russia. So I have two final questions here for you. The first one, what can we do? Is there anything we can do other than just prepare for the collapse? And what are you doing to prepare?
One, yes, I think everyone needs to prepare for this, because the event that I was talking about, I think it's not just going to be, a plane flying into the World Trade Center. I think this is going to be much, much bigger this time, because this is going to be what brings us into war. And I think there's going to be what they call cyber attacks, where they're going to hit the financial institutions, they're going to hit the power grid and infrastructure, and they're going to black out certain cities. And I think we're going to see physical attacks, like maybe dirty nukes or some type of chemical type of weapons in multiple cities, to scare us all together into going to war. And I think this is why everyone needs to be prepared, because once these countries stop using the dollar, we're going to see a devaluation of the dollar. Things are going to get very, very expensive, and you will not be able to afford it. And you're going to see all those people that aren't prepared running to the stores to try to get as much as they possibly can just to survive and live. And what I think we need to do is continually doing what you're doing, what I'm doing, is getting the word out. And I think eventually the people of the U.S. and around the world need to finally stand up, because if we don't go to the problem, the source of this problem, we can never solve this. And we, as a nation, we need to come together as one and say, enough is enough. We're not going to war for you. We don't want a war. And we need to get rid of the central banking system, because that is the root of all of this. And we all need to come together, not 10,000 people, 20,000 people. We need millions upon millions of people coming together, marching on Washington. And this is what they're very nervous about. And this is why they're putting spikes on the fence in the White House. This is why they're putting more guards in front of all the governmental buildings. This is why they have the blimp flying, which got loose, flying above the Washington area, because this is why they don't want drones flying around, because they're very nervous. Government officials, or I like to call them government employees, they don't like to give up power. And the people have to demand, without going and using force, but peacefully demand. And if they see millions upon millions of people out there demanding they step down, that I think will definitely work, because they can't argue with millions of people. 10,000 people, yes. 100,000, yes. But millions, it's much, much tougher. And we need to get the country together to do this, or we'll be going to war.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I think that right now they're spinning us up, and they're leaving us wide open for attack. That is inevitable. I agree with you as far as the chemical side of it. I have some articles that I'm going to be talking about a little later in the show that maybe will allude to a possible chemical attack coming, and some of the other threats that we have here on the border. I have one last question for you, Dave. Do you think that this presidential election matters? If so, who's your guy? Do you have a guy? What are your thoughts on this election?
Well, a long time ago, I stopped believing in the election process. I don't believe that any of these leaders are working for the people whatsoever. And at this point, it really doesn't make any difference, because the policies, and I'm not talking about like abortion, the surface policies, I'm talking about the policies that actually run the country, they never change because they're never going to change that. And at this point, going forward, if it's, Hillary Clinton, Trump, or anyone else, eventually when they're brought into the mix, they're going to do what the corporation central bankers want, or they're going to die. There's no other way around this because that's the choice they're given. There's nothing else. And if they try to do something where it's not going with their agenda, they're going to take them out. That's it.
Wow, that situation's looking bleak. That's not good news, man. That's not what I wanted to hear. All right, well, that's Dave from X22 Report, keeping it real. Again, hey Dave, what time do you broadcast over there? Are you a live show? Or is it pre-recorded?
Pre-recorded. I usually post my report around 6 to 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and on YouTube it goes up a little bit later because it takes a little bit longer to upload, but usually it's up by 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, sir. Well, I certainly appreciated having you coming on the show. I learned a lot, and I hope everyone else did too. Will you come back someday in the future?
Sure, no problem. I'd love to come back.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Dave. It was really fun having you, man.
All right, thank you.
All righty, take care. All right, gang. So we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to dive into some of these other featured topics here. The next on our agenda, I want to talk about Connecticut's plan to ban gun sales to those on the federal terrorism watch list, and why people on terror watch list, why banning people on terror watch list will not keep us safe, and also why it's unconstitutional. We're going to dive into the founder's intent on this one. So anyway, we'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Matt Worley III.
Hello, we're back. It is now the second hour of the program. I sure do appreciate you all sticking with us. All right, so next on the agenda, Connecticut is currently planning to ban sales to people on the federal terrorism watch list. I'm going to talk about why this is a bad thing. Why would we not want to ban people on watch lists? Well, there's many reasons, but most of which it doesn't work, and it's already proven to not work. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and get it from the horse's mouth. Not that I'm calling him a horse face or anything, but let's get it from the horse's mouth. The governor of Connecticut talking about this. Let me find the link here. There we go. This is an article on the New York Times. They have a video that's about to play with the governor, Daniel.
We intend to prevent, by executive order, through my powers as governor, those on government watch lists from obtaining a permit to purchase a firearm in Connecticut. In our state, in order to purchase a firearm, you first need to obtain a permit from a public safety agency, during which time a thorough background check is conducted. The executive order would add an additional level of protection and require those who apply for a permit to be screened against government watch lists. That would prevent anyone on the list the ability to purchase handguns, shotguns, rifles, and ammunition. Assault weapons are already outlawed in Connecticut. I have been in touch with the White House directly on this matter, and we are working with federal authorities to gain access to their lists for this purpose. As we work with the federal government, we will determine the appropriate lists to be included, be it a no-fly list or some combination of those who should not have weapons. If approved, we will sign an executive order. We will take action. Like all Americans, I've been horrified by the recent terrorist attack in California and Paris. This should be a wake-up call for all of us. This is a moment to seize here in America. And today I'm here to say that Connecticut, we are seizing this moment.
They certainly are seizing the moment, aren't they? They're jumping on the bandwagon to do something that will not prevent anything from happening anywhere, because as we pointed out last week, and I will continue to point out, first things first, people can actually create guns. You can manufacture guns in your own garage with a little bit of manufacturing knowledge and know-how. You can actually make a gun. I mean, there's such a thing as a zip gun that was pretty common in the Prohibition era. Zip guns, those were very common, but now we have more complicated manufacturing machinery that you can get. People have these in their garage today. So you can produce your own weapon. Even if you got rid of all the guns on the street, you can produce your own weapon. Number one, guns can still come across the border in the same way that drugs are. Cocaine is not a domestic product yet. It is still flooding our streets. And it just so happens to also be illegal. And how is that possible? How is it here if it's illegal? Oh, my goodness. I thought if you made something illegal, it went away. It just disappeared. It wasn't there anymore. Just like murder's illegal, but yet it still happens. Burglary, illegal. Assault, illegal. All these things still happen. Your little laws in your Capitol buildings, sitting somewhere enshrined in glass, criminals don't care about that because by definition, criminals don't follow the law. So, again, you think that you can ban all guns, but again, guns can be made, people can bring them in from across the border, and in addition, there's going to be people like me who will never turn in their guns. I will never willingly turn in my guns. You're going to have to come and get them. And I'm not going to comply. I'm not going to make your job easy. I know many, many, many Americans out there are like that. So, there's over 300 million guns in America. How are you going to get them all? The left, they like to portray the argument that, oh, how are you going to collect all the illegal immigrants or undocumented workers, as they like to call it? How are you going to collect the 20-plus million, illegal immigrants that are here? It's impossible. There's no way that anyone can ever get 20 million people out of the country. What are you, crazy? And yeah, that's probably not possible. I will concede that point. But that, first of all, if that logic applies to that, then why wouldn't it apply to something that there's vastly more of, 330 million guns at least, probably closer to 700 million. So how are you going to get all those? It's not possible. A lot of them aren't registered. We don't even know. We don't even know how many guns there are. And with that said, these assault rifle, what do they call them? Magazine bans, banning magazines that have a high capacity. First of all, it's very subjective. What is high capacity? Well, to a liberal, it's apparently a gun that fires more than 10 bullets in one magazine. A gun that can carry more than 10 bullets in the magazine. Apparently, that's high capacity. So, eventually that number will dwindle down to a gun that shoots just one bullet. How much will this change over time? But more importantly, again, those magazines could potentially be manufactured illegally. Those magazines could, first of all, let me just ask you, if you are a gun owner, do you have just one magazine for your gun, or do you have a couple? Do you have like a whole slew of them? I'm just curious because let's just say that there's 300 million guns in America, and each person who has a gun has several high-capacity magazines. Now, granted, all of these are not, AR-15 or AK-47 style weapons, but I'm making a point here that there are significantly more magazines out there than there are guns. So again, how are you going to collect all these high-capacity magazines? How are you going to do it? It's not possible. Just not possible. So this terror watch list situation is extremely concerning to me because I am literally watching due process die. That is the title of today's episode, The Death of Due Process, Government Watch List. Again, this is episode 99 of our program. This is concerning. Now, I think anybody who's been paying attention obviously knows that something is not right in terms of our politicians following the Constitution. Something's off a little bit. There's something going on here. I can't quite put my finger on it, but something's wrong. And what it is that these people don't give a crap about the Constitution. They say their oath to the Constitution almost jokingly. I'm surprised they don't crack up while they're saying it because they literally have nothing but disdain for this document that created this country and gave them their power. It granted them their authority, and it did so through the consent of the people. So the idea that you're going to have, first of all, a secret government list with people on there that have not been convicted of a crime, people who have not even seen a judge, never been in front of a jury. So far, it's only the accusation of government officials, and people are secretly added to this list. You don't even know if you're on the list or not until you try to fly. Then you might get groped by TSA. They'll fill around in your private parts. Yeah, so all of this is happening under the cover of darkness, shrouded by night. And as my good friend Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant likes to say, you cleanse things with daylight. Evil cannot exist within the darkness. That's why his YouTube channel was called Daylight Disinfectant. So, again, how can we, first of all, give our consent to something that we don't know about when there's no transparency in the process to begin with? Let alone the transparency process behind it comes the due process aspect. So, in order to be added to this list, all it takes is an accusation. And it doesn't even necessarily take an accusation of something that you've done. It could be that you share a name of somebody who the government thinks is a terrorist or thinks is connected to terrorists in some way. Or, again, they're not above just adding your name to a list to punish you. Look at what the IRS did. They were targeting Tea Party donors, people who were Tea Party organizations, 501c3 or C4, I can't remember now, but organizations that were Tea Party during an election year simply because they were Tea Party related. So no one's been prosecuted for that, by the way. No one was prosecuted. Lois Lerner, all of her hard drives just crashed out of nowhere. And then she destroyed them. And she's not going to face charges. That's not going to happen. No charges. This is a dangerous situation we found ourselves in, gang. I don't trust this government as far as I can throw them. And as far as giving them more authority, more leeway, more discretion, they've already have far too much discretion. Prosecutorial discretion is one of the biggest tools of tyranny that is going on in our country right now. They let the elite get off. Look at Hillary Clinton with her email scandal. Hundreds of instances of classified material on her email server. If this was average Joe Schmo, Mr. Smith down the street, if he was doing this, if some average citizen had this information, this kind of sensitive, classified information, and in some of these cases, she's had top secret information on her hard drive server, the hard drive of her server. If this was an average citizen, they would be sitting in some federal penitentiary right now. Maybe some black site being waterboarded. Oh, I'm sorry, enhanced interrogated. This is what is happening with our country. We are falling deep into a pit of tyranny. And I know that may sound like I'm overblowing the situation, but our government is running amok. They no longer care about the Constitution. The fact that they even have terror watch lists says a lot. I want you to think about the idea of a government watch list. You're on a list, they're watching you, and they obviously don't have the authority or any kind of probable cause to pick you up, throw you in jail, because if they did, they would have done that already. Or if they aren't doing it, maybe we should ask why. Why is our government allowing people that they have things on to be free? Again, we find now that most of the FBI stings that have been disruptive to terror plots are stings that were conducted from them getting in contact with people who they thought were radicalized and helping them to carry out a plot and then arresting them at the last minute saying, "Oh, look, we stopped this plot. Look at what we're doing." Well, you also played a very active role in creating the plot. So there's that. Why didn't you just pick this guy up to begin with? Well, that's part of the reason. Maybe why they have these terror watch lists is because they keep people who they suspect, and then maybe they're trying to set them up. We already know that the FBI is doing that. They try to set people up to then get them. All right? But the thing is, you can't take away rights from somebody, even the right of travel, the freedom of travel. And that's what this no-fly list is they're taking away your freedom to travel simply by accusation. And there's no evidence required for this. And there's no transparency in the process. We don't know what's going on. And they say that, it doesn't make sense for us to allow people on terror watch lists to have access to firearms. Well, first of all, the argument has been made about foreigners and things like that. It needs to be pointed out that you do not have a constitutionally protected right in the United States to keep and bear arms if you're not a U.S. citizen. Now, again, natural rights say that everyone has the right to keep and bear arms, but our government will not protect that right. Our government does not recognize your right as a foreigner to keep and bear arms here. So, and I'm not necessarily commenting on that. I'm just putting it out there. What they're doing by putting your name on this no-fly list, this terror watch list, first of all, they're violating your right to travel. That's the first and foremost one. And now they're talking about, again, without a judge, without a jury, without any conviction, without any probable cause or reasonable suspicion, without anything, without you even knowing about it, without any transparency in the process, without us being able to do anything to prevent our name from being added to the list. Yeah, we can challenge it once we find out our name has been added to the list. Maybe you'll be able to challenge that. But the government doesn't care. The government does not care. But imagine the amount of effort and energy it's going to take for you to get back a right that shall not be infringed. You didn't do anything. Now you have to prove your innocence as opposed to them having the burden of proof to prove you guilty. They have completely flipped the script on this. Up is down, black is white. This is not following the Constitution, nor is it following founders' intent. If you really come down to it, they were against government lists, our founders, because Great Britain was using lists against them and removing the rights of people on those lists. Government lists are a form of tyranny, and we should be opposing the actual list itself, let alone the applying of the list to people who, in order to remove their gun rights. I mean, it's unreal. It is completely unreal. So first things first, I have an article here on thedailybeast.com. This article is written by Kathy Gellis, I think. That's a name? I'm not sure. Anyway, the article is, "My fellow liberals don't support Obama's terror watch list gun ban." Now, this is something that I think that we need to discuss because, first of all, this is a liberal saying this. This is not a right-wing extremist. This is not a Tea Party person. This isn't even a libertarian. This is a liberal saying this. So the article says, the president is pushing for a law to stop people on terror watch lists from purchasing firearms. But these lists should give us pause, especially if they deprive people of rights. I'm seeing a lot of friends and others who generally hang out near me on the left of the political spectrum express outrage at a recent vote in Congress to reject fixing what at first glance seems like a terrible loophole. People on the terror watch list can still buy guns. Even President Obama, who called Sunday night for a law that would prevent people on a subset of a terror watch list from purchasing a firearm, is among this crowd. Their outrage stems from the logical reaction. If there are people we think are bent on doing us harm, why are we giving them easy access to the tools to do it? The concern is reasonable. The proposed remedy to deny people on the watch list the ability to buy guns is not, however, because it has nothing to do with guns, but because it has to do with lists. As Americans, we understand well how important due process is. No one, for instance, should be thrown in jail on the say-so of some government official who declares they deserve it. Such is the behavior of tyrants. The Founding Fathers understood, and so we enshrined in our Constitution the right to counsel, the right against being compelled to testify against oneself, the right to trial by jury, etc. All of these rights are checks to ensure the government can't simply pluck innocent people out of their lives and strip them of their life, liberty, and property. Only after fairly testing the charges against them can the government punish people with such deprivation. But none of these hurdles must be overcome for the government. Hurdles must be overcome for the government to put someone on a list, especially not a list like this, which is a watch list. It is a list of people that for whatever reason, a reason that no one outside the government knows, the government has decided deserves closer scrutiny of their actions. Is the government right to be concerned about these people? Maybe, yes, but maybe not. And there is no way for ordinary citizens to know, which means there's also no way for ordinary citizens to know whether any of them, even people who in no way intend to commit acts of terrorism, are also on that list. In other words, there is no way to know whether you are on that list, nor is there any way to know how to get off of it. That there is any list at all should give us all pause. It has not historically been the hallmark of a healthy democracy when governments have kept lists of people they didn't like. It is hard to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people when the government keeps track of the people, including those dissidents who would challenge it, which is something that in a democracy they are allowed and even supposed to do. But how injurious a list may be to democracy and democratic values will ultimately depend on what the government does with a list. And that's why this proposed legislation is so concerning, because what this proposal calls for is the government using a list as a basis to deny people on it a right to which they were otherwise entitled. And I would argue, this is me speaking here, that this is not just an entitlement. This is not something that the government, has to provide for you. This right is innate. The government is not allowed to touch it. It's not a positive right. It's not a right that the government has to provide for you. It's a right that the government is not allowed to screw with. They're not allowed to touch. It's set in stone, and it is enumerated in the Constitution to protect that natural human right. So, this article continues. Now, maybe the modern interpretation of the right to bear arms has grown out of proportion from anything the founders could possibly have intended, and maybe how we understand the scope of that right could use some adjustment. And this is a leftist speaking. So this is obviously you're going to have that. Addressing this question could potentially be a good place for gun control advocates to devote their efforts. But based on the plain text of the Second Amendment and subsequent jurisprudence, it is clear that some right is in there somewhere. Okay, I won't continue with the rest of this article here, gang. You can feel free to check it out. Again, that's thedailybeast.com. You can read the article. It's titled, "My Fellow Liberals Don't Support Obama's Terror Watch List Gun Ban" by Kathy Gillis. So this is particularly important because when people even on the left are calling for this, to not support this, I think we really need to be paying attention. And first of all, I mean, this is something that without that, we would all be paying attention to begin with. But one thing I want to talk about here is in this discussion. They're talking about how there's clearly some kind of right in the Second Amendment somewhere, and that it maybe potentially has grown out of proportion from anything the founders could have possibly intended. Well, I would disagree. I don't think that the founders were idiots. I think that they clearly knew, first of all, that this was an individual right to keep bear arms, because at the beginning part of the Second Amendment, they secured your right to have a militia, to form a militia. It's necessary to the security of a free state. That's why they put it in there, comma. Now they're securing your right as an individual to keep and bear arms. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, the founders, if she's saying that they couldn't have possibly intended for that, for anything in the advancement of weaponry, first of all, that's insane, because weapons have always advanced throughout history. If you look at the Iron Age, the Steel Age, the Bronze Age, even those weapons were advancing then. Then we got to the Gunpowder Age, and weapons, even during 1776, weapons technology had continued to advance. It is not a stretch to think that our founders would have been able to foresee some advances in weaponry. And the amount of speed that you could shoot bullets at one another. I mean, it's unbelievable to think that couldn't happen. That they would not have foresaw that. And if they didn't foresee it, or why would they have put shall not be infringed? Shall not be infringed unless you can get a bullet or a gun that can shoot a lot of bullets at one time, or maybe looks pretty scary, or potentially has one of those foregrip things on the front of it that you can hang on to that really doesn't affect the function of the gun, or it has like a shorter barrel. No, they didn't put any of those stipulations in. They said this right shall not be infringed. It's pretty clear cut. Pretty clear cut indeed. But yet, it's been infringed all over the place. We're living in a post-constitutional era. We no longer are governed by the Constitution. Our government officials are lawless. They're doing things behind our back, first of all, so we can't give our consent to it, and that is the basis of their power. Their power is granted to them by the consent of the people. How can we consent to something that we don't know what is going on? This terror watch list is just one obvious example of that. In addition, we have the right, the unalienable right. This means that we can't have that right taken away. We can't even give that right away. It's unalienable. It exists. No matter what we do, you can choose not to assert your rights, but it still exists nonetheless. So we possess these rights innately, and our government, they never gave it to us. They never bestowed them upon us. We demanded it. We demanded these rights in order for this government to have any power at all. That's why the Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments. Hey, government, before we give you any powers at all, these are our rules. You'll play by this because your power is only granted to you by us. And the moment you step out of bounds and you start infringing upon our rights is the moment we stop giving you consent, and your power is meaningless. Power in general is really just an illusion. Who's powerful? Are people who are rich powerful? Well, what is money? It's an illusion of assets. That's all it is. Everything is an illusion when it comes to power. You think money makes you powerful? Well, money is an illusion too. Power itself is an illusion. Why are you powerful? The only people that are truly powerful are the people that can kick your butt. That's it. Those are the people that are powerful. People that can knock you on your butt single-handedly. Those are the most powerful people in the world. But because we live underneath the illusion of power, we got governments that are telling people that they have to do what they're told, and those people do what they're told because they believe in this power structure, this hierarchical structure over them. They believe that they in some ways are owned by another. Because if you believe that someone has power over you, someone has control over you, you are giving up some of your self-ownership. You own yourself. At least you should think that you do. You own yourself. You are a free person. You can think for yourself. You can make your own decisions. You don't need the government, first of all, to play welfare state for you. You don't need the government to tell you, how to live your life. You don't need these things. But we've given so much of our sovereignty, our personal sovereignty, our individual sovereignty over to the government. Very few of us actually believe that we own ourselves. Now, if you were asked outright, do you own yourself? Many of us would say, yes, of course I own myself. But then when you start asking questions, probing questions into the subject, you would see that many people would be willing to give up that self-ownership to a government authority, to another body of people. But this entire concept of giving up our gun rights because we are on a list by the government and there's no accusation. We're not being accused of anything in particular. We're just on a list. And we can't find out. We can't find out, first of all, who even told us or who even said that we should be put on this list. Very concerning. So let's get some more information. What is this terrorist watch list? I'm curious. I want to know more about it. Well, I got a clip here. Let's go ahead and play it.
All right. Well, another leak has surfaced through The Intercept that's giving us an inside.
Actually, I digress. Let's go ahead and cut to a commercial break. We're running out of time here for this segment. So when we come back, we're going to start with this terror watch list video, and it's going to be talking more about who's on the terror watch list. How do you get on it? Anyway, we'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, gang, we're back. So last we left, I was about to play this clip. By the way, this is from RT America. So again, you typically find within oppressive government regimes that you'll get the best news about another government, about your own government, from somewhere else. Okay, so I don't trust anything that Russia tells us. First of all, I don't trust anything that any government tells us. Period. I don't trust our own government, let alone Russia or China or whoever else. But what I will say is that you'll get the best inkling, the best idea of what's going on within your own country by listening to the propaganda from other countries. And likewise, the people in China and Russia are getting the best information about what their own government is doing, very likely, from outside sources as well. So the bottom line is you just can't trust your own government, and you certainly cannot trust the governments of other countries. So anyway, let's go ahead and play this clip. This is talking about the terror watch list and who's actually in there and how do you get there.
All right. Well, another leak has surfaced through The Intercept that's giving us an inside look at the government's terror watch list. We're just learning that nearly 40% of those on the government's terrorist watch list have no affiliation whatsoever with recognized terrorism groups. Earlier, I spoke with RT producer Tyrell Ventura to break down the very latest, and I first asked him about some of the key revelations from this damning report?
It's pretty amazing what Scahill and The Intercept has been able to kind of put forth. But you're talking about, the government has been adding names to this kind of watch database at a rate of almost 900 records a day, either on existing subjects or new names into the database. 1,600 or 16,000 people, including 1,200 Americans, have been classified as selectees. These are people who are targeted for screenings at airports and border crossings and things of that nature. In fact, the Obama administration has presided over an unprecedented amount of expansion on the kind of no-fly list and border crossings. It's an all-time high of 47,000 people now that has been uncovered in this. This information that they provided us has also uncovered that the top 5 U.S. cities with the most known or suspected terrorists in it are New York, Houston, San Diego, Chicago, and Dearborn, Michigan, which is kind of an odd add to that list. Major cities and then Dearborn, nothing but Dearborn.
It's not that odd considering that the largest concentration of Arab Americans actually lives in Dearborn, Michigan, not far from where I'm from.
Exactly,
and so,
almost 40% of its population is from Dearborn, which kind of begs the question, is this just profiling? Are these names that they're kind of throwing on this list clearly just for profiling? When you talk about numbers earlier, 680, out of the 680,000 people on this, to have 40% of that be people with no known affiliation to terrorist groups, that's a huge number to come out. That's huge.
And this is after we heard about the guidelines to which how they determine who should be on this list. Of course, they're very loose guidelines with people putting random people on this list with mere suspicions.
Yes.
But the report also gets into the biometric collection of these individuals. What do we learn from this report?
It's really interesting just at how much of the kind of wide-ranging biometrics they're now putting on people in this report. So if we go with the idea that they're kind of very loose in how you get onto this database, and now suddenly you're also having your facial images, fingerprints, and iris scans and things of that nature being put on there. More than 500,000 facial images and nearly 250,000 fingerprints and 70,000 iris scans are contained in the database. As long as handwriting samples, signatures, scars, marks, tattoos, DNA strands. They're doing everything they can to kind of keep adding to this list.
Everything is valuable, apparently.
Yes.
And just lastly, to be clear, this latest revelation does not have anything to do with a leak from former NSA contractor Edward Snowden. This is completely separate.
No, this is a completely new leaker that we don't know quite who that is, except we just kind of are following, The Interceptor and Jeremy Scahill's reporting on this, and clearly they're doing a good job.
So perhaps that will come to light. We'll have to see.
Anyway, this clip here, this is not new, by the way. This is published. This video was published on August 5th, 2014. So this information is not new, and who knows how many people have been added to the list. Again, they were saying about 900 a day, if I heard that correctly. But there are at least as of 2014, 680,000 individuals on the government's terrorist screening watch list. So, and again, over 280,000 of those are classified as having no recognized terrorist group affiliation. 280,000. This is unbelievable. I mean, this is madness. This is the definition of madness. So let's go ahead and let's move into another topic here. Well, actually, let's dive a little further, deeper maybe into this. Let me see if I can find some other interest. Oh, yes. You guys will like this. You will definitely like this. So this is Trey Gowdy. He's talking to a government official. He's talking about this whole due process situation. We're going to dive deeper into this rabbit hole here and listen to Trey Gowdy's thought processes on this, because I really like, first of all, I like this line of questioning. So here we go.
Let me ask you another question about the terrorism list. What process is afforded a U.S. citizen, not someone who's overstayed a visa, not someone who crossed the border without permission, but an American citizen? What process is currently afforded an American citizen before they go on that list?
I'm sorry. There's not a process afforded the citizen prior to getting on the list. There is a process should someone feel they are unduly placed on them.
Yes, there is. And when I say process, I'm actually using half of the term due process, which is a phrase we find in the Constitution, that you cannot deprive people of certain things without due process. So I understand Mr. Good's idea, which is wait until your right has been taken from you, and then you can petition the government to get it back. I understand that that's his idea. My question is, can you name another constitutional right that we have that is chilled until you find out it's chilled, and then you have to petition the government to get it back?
Okay, so this is not over, and we're going to finish this. I just want to ask that question to you guys. What constitutional right, what right in general, do you think that the government is already currently, as Trey Gowdy referred to it, chilling, where it's you can still have this right even if we add you to this list that denies you from it. All you have to do is appeal your name being on the list, and we don't know the process for that or even how to go about doing that, or even when your name has been added to the list because it's secret, it's not transparent at all. What other right? What other constitutional right or natural human right? What other right is there that is taken away? Now, I've already mentioned the right to travel. That is one of our inherent rights that we have just as being free human beings. We have the right to travel without being molested by government agents. And that right has been infringed upon repeatedly. So TSA grabbing your private parts, literally molesting you and our children everywhere you go. And again, TSA has a 90% failure rating at finding contraband coming through their security. 90% of the people that were going through testing, these are government tests, they're testing TSA's efficacy. And 90% or more, depending on the study, some of the studies were 99%. Of the contraband made it through TSA. So they're grabbing our private parts, they're touching on little children. You know, they're doing this, and all at the same time. They don't want to appear to be racially profiling you, so they'll stop you, and they'll let somebody in full burqa walk right by. They don't have to go to secondary, but you have to submit and go through the body scanner. No big deal for you, right? We got to let these guys go, but you have to be checked. You got to be checked. We can't be appearing to be racially profiling you. So you come over to secondary, and we're going to go and wave our wand around here, put the rubber gloves on you, pat you down, touch your private parts, all this stuff. You know, you have a right to travel. First of all, you have an absolute right to travel, and the government stops you, molests you, and all this stuff. Again, 90% failure rate. They are failing to do the job. I want you to name one terrorist that the TSA has captured. Name one. You can't do it because guess what, gang? They haven't caught anybody. Anyone. Not one. Amazing. So, what other right? Imagine, let's apply this to the First Amendment. You have the freedom of speech and the freedom of religion, unless we put you on this list, and then you got to go apply to get your freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press. Oh, well, we pretty much have already got that. When you have to get permission from the FCC to broadcast things on the radio. You got to get your license, which is just a permission slip. And without it, you are denied your right to broadcast. You're denied your freedom of speech, freedom of press, without this little permit. Thank goodness for the internet, because we are not, as of right now, regulated by the FCC, although they're trying to get their grubby little fingers on this, the internet, and trying to be able to regulate free speech on the internet as well. So, yeah. And let's look at freedom of religion. Yeah, I think a lot of people would be really upset if you were denied your right to practice your religion by being added to a list, and you'd have to petition the government to get your name off the list, although you don't know that your name's on the list at all, because again, there's no transparency. Let's see, the Second Amendment. They're talking about that. A Third Amendment. Oh, you have a freedom against them stationing troops in your home, unless they add you to a terrorist watch list, and then they can put troops in your home in order to watch you, just to watch you, because you're on a terrorist watch list. Wouldn't that make sense? We should put troops in terrorists' house, right? Just to make sure that they're not doing anything they're supposed to be doing. We'll suspend your Third Amendment right. This is coming around, gang. This is coming around. If you don't stop tyranny in its tracks, it will spread and grow in ways you cannot even imagine. Put troops in U.S. citizens' house that are on the terrorist watch list. Just spy on them. This is what Great Britain did, by the way. You know that they stationed troops in their own citizens' homes, in their colonists' homes. And these troops were, first of all, acting as spies on them. Second of all, they were abusing the wives and daughters of the people who live there. And in many cases, these troops were stationed there as a way to punish these people, as a way to get back at people that they didn't like. That's what these lists were about. They were putting their troops in these homes to punish these people. So then when the people have serious grievances, hey, this officer you stationed in my house is raping my wife and my daughter. Somebody do something about it. The commanders didn't care. Because again, government doesn't care about you. You're cattle. All you are is revenue. So when you become a dissenter, when you become somebody that the government doesn't like, they don't care about you. They have no remorse whatsoever. And all of this is a form of punishment. So let's apply this to the Fourth Amendment. You have a right to against unlawful search and seizure. You have a right to privacy, all that good stuff. Unless you're added to this list, and then you just don't have the right. And you don't even know that you don't have the right. Fifth Amendment, you have the right to you have the right to remain silent. But not unless you're on this list. If you're on this list, we can interrogate you, waterboard you, get a confession out of you, make you testify against yourself. The list goes on. Go through the Bill of Rights. What rights would we accept this to happen to? And think about it this way as well. We are already currently violating these rights surreptitiously. A lot of people don't even know what our government is doing behind our back. They are spying on every human electronic communication, and they're saying that they're not doing it. And they just said, "Oh, we ended that program. We don't do that program. Now we got to get a warrant." Yeah, right. I do not believe them. I don't believe them. I believe many of you out there don't believe them either. We cannot trust this government. They are lawless. They're out of control. The house of cards is coming down, gang, and America is about to experience something dramatically different than what we have in the past 50 years. We're going to see our economy collapse. We're going to turn into a third world country. Our government is going to go dark, and we're not going to do anything about it. The vast majority of people are so apathetic and ignorant about what their government is doing on their behalf. And I have no problem with people disengaging from politics. If it's not your thing, I think you're making a mistake, but that's your right. You have a right to be ignorant. The problem is that so many people are ignorant, but yet they allow the government to spool them up and use them against themselves. That's where I have a problem. If you want to remain disengaged, if you want to remain stupid about politics, if you want to remain completely away from everything that's going on in the world, you don't want to put the pieces of the puzzle back together, that's fine. Do that. Stay out of it. But don't come in late to the game and try to tell us that you're going to change the rules of the game all of a sudden. No. The rules are set. You can't we have a constitution. We have due process. The government is using and manipulating useful idiots to get their way. And I don't know. I don't think that this one will pass. I don't think that this one will fly. I think eventually this will be struck down as completely unconstitutional. But that's us having to rely on the United States Supreme Court to actually do their job. Which is it's funny because their job is actually never granted to them in the Constitution. Being the sole arbiter of all things constitutional, that was a power that was never granted to them. They stole that power. They just seized it. They did that. Judicial review was never granted. Judicial review is the ability for them to determine what is constitutional and what is not. There's nowhere in the Constitution. There's nowhere in there that gives the Supreme Court that responsibility, that power. Nowhere. They seized it. They created that whole process themselves. And I don't personally have any problem with them doing that. What I do have a problem with is the fact that there are no checks and balances surrounding that power, because the power was never given to them in the first place, and it was never intended for them to have. So there were no checks and balances created against that, because they didn't intend for that to happen. So the point is that the Supreme Court is over here making decisions about what is constitutional and what is not, and there is no recourse. There's no check and balance on that. There's no way for the states or the people to overrule a Supreme Court decision. So we're just supposed to accept what 9 people in robes tell us is constitutional and what is not. And again, it doesn't even take all 9 of them. It only takes a majority. So 5 people in robes are really who is telling us what is constitutional and what is not. So back to this video, Trey Gowdy, who's grilling a DHS official on due process, he asked her, what other constitutional amendments can you deny? Can you chill by adding people to a terror watch list? What other rights can you take away, and people have to get it back by going through this process to get their rights back? Here he goes.
Idea. My question is, can you name another constitutional right that we have that is chilled until you find out it's chilled, and then you have to petition the government to get it back? Is that true with the First Amendment?
Sir, there are strict criteria before.
That's not my question, ma'am. That is not my question. My question is, what process is afforded a United States citizen before that person's constitutional right is infringed? Then he's fine with doing it with the Second Amendment. My question is, how about the First? How about we not let them set up a website or a Google account? How about we not let them join the church until they can petition government to get off the list? How about not get a lawyer? How about the Sixth Amendment? How about you can't get a lawyer until you petition the government to get off the list? Or my favorite, how about the Eighth Amendment? We're going to subject you to cruel and unusual punishment until you petition the government to get off the list. Is there another constitutional right that we treat the same way for American citizens that we do the Second Amendment? Can you think of one? Can you think of one?
I hear crickets.
I don't have an answer for you, sir.
All right, well, I'm out of town, but...
So, she didn't have an answer, of course. But, of course, no answer here. And you know, you're going to hear this on the left. And again, I want you to ask your leftist friends, what would they think, especially the ones who support putting people who are on terrorist watch list, taking away the gun rights of people who are on terrorist watch list. I want you to apply this to their sacred cows, all right? Ask them if they think that the government should have the right to take away their right to an abortion simply because they're added on a list. Ask them that. Do you think, because this is a right that's not even enshrined in the Constitution. This right is created from Roe v. Wade, just a United States Supreme Court case. So, again, 5 people, 9 people in robes, 5 of them majority. I don't know what the ruling was on the Roe v. Wade, but again, these are just 9 people who decided that this is apparently a right that we have, so it's not even enshrined in the Constitution anywhere. Ask them what they think about a government list denying people of their right to an abortion, and if they'd be okay with that, as long as they have the ability to petition the government to get that right back. You think they'd be okay with that? You think that'd be something that they would find acceptable? No, of course not. Of course they wouldn't. They would have nothing but problems with that. They would be rioting in the streets for their right to abort. But, again, this is not in the Constitution anywhere. Nowhere. And by the way, I believe Roe, if I'm remembering correctly, Roe from the Roe v. Wade never even actually had an abortion. She's actually anti-abortion now. She's pro-life now. Interesting. I just thought I'd mention it. Not really what I'm here to talk about today, but I thought I'd talk about it right now. Anyway, so I just want to also hear, let's see, we got some other stuff we can get to on this same topic here, the same vein. We got a quick story here we'll get to here. Let's see. Flowing like water, Obama's speech causes gun sale spike. So as soon as Obama's talking about getting rid of the ability to have a gun, to buy a gun, and they're talking about potentially retroactively making this illegal for you to even possess. Not even just to buy a gun, but illegal for you to have a gun. So in order for them to... I want you to imagine logistically, if we as a country decide that you can just add somebody to a list without a trial, without a judge, without a jury, without a conviction, without probable cause, without reasonable suspicion, with just the mere accusation of somebody who you're not even allowed to face your accuser or even know that you were accused, without any transparency in the process. If we're going to allow this, all right, how are we going to stop people who are on this list from getting guns? Let's talk about the actual logistics, and then we'll come back to this article. If you're going to prevent them from, first of all, buying the guns, that's one thing. That's a little easier to do if you're just going to prevent them from buying the gun. Now, it's not at all constitutional, completely lawless, but we're just talking about the actual logistics of how you accomplish it. You just make it so they can't do it. You have to run a check on a database, and boom, you're denied. That's how you'll find out you're on that list, by the way. Anyway, but if you're going to say that they can't even have guns, which is, again, this is the next step, they're not even allowed to have guns, well, then you're going to have to, first of all, start digging in, checking to see if they've purchased guns. So you're going to have registration. You're going to have to register guns, because, again, a lot of states, it's not even required to register your guns. A lot of, like Washington, where I just lived previously, you don't even have to register your guns at all. No registration required. Now, that may not be forever, but again, there are so many guns that the government doesn't even know about because they've never been registered. And there's guns that have been sold in private transfers that even if they were registered in the past, they may not even belong to those people anymore. So they go there to look for the gun. It doesn't even belong to that person anymore. They may not even have a record of who they sold it to. So how are they going to find these guns? So if you're on a terror watch list, they're going to cross-reference the gun registration list, but that's not going to be enough. That will not be enough because people who are on this list will still possibly have guns. So what else are they going to have to do? Oh, well, they're going to have to search you. They'll have to search your home to make sure that you don't have any guns. And first of all, even if that is done, even if they do conduct a search, there's no guarantee that they're going to get all the guns because people can hide guns. It's not like it's impossible. It doesn't have a GPS tracking chip in it, although they're going to try to get that eventually. They're already talking about smart guns and guns that only will work if the registered owner is holding the gun. And these scanners, like fingerprint scanners and things like that, all these smart guns, they could potentially not fail. In addition, there's like these little bracelets for smart guns. That's another thing that they're looking at is to you have to put on a bracelet in order to use your gun because the bracelet sends a signal to the gun and it's only registered within a certain amount of feet. So basically only the person wearing that bracelet can operate the gun. These are all of the little schemes that they have in order to regulate and infringe upon your right to keep and bear arms. But again, by adding your name to the list, they're going to have to search your house in order to make sure that you don't have a gun. Again, that won't stop all crime. It's not going to keep all the guns out of these people's hands. People can still hide the guns. People can still make guns. People can get guns illicitly. There are so many ways that people can get guns illegally. So, with that said, in addition, people can steal guns. Forgot about that one. You can steal guns. By the way, even if it's completely off the street, you can steal guns from the U.S. government. Last week, we covered a bunch of articles where weapons were stolen out of armories controlled by the U.S. government. Oh, and one of the reasons why, they didn't turn the alarm on because it was under construction and they had no one guarding it. The guy who stole the guns, he was only caught because he was already GPS tracked. He had an anklet on his ankle, a GPS tracker on his ankle, because he was involved in child rape. And the government was already tracking him and he got caught. He spent like 5 hours loading guns into a vehicle. Anyway. So even that is suspect. But they're going to have to take away not just your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, but they're going to have to take away your Fourth Amendment protection against unlawful searches and seizures. Again, they won't have a warrant. All they have is just your name on some list, and they have no reasonable suspicion or probable cause to add you to that list. They're just adding you to the list for whatever reason. Maybe you are a dissenter of this government, and I'm sure that many of us today, you out there listening, me myself, will end up on one of these lists one day if things continue down this path. But again, even what they're going to do will not be enough. It will never be enough, because this is not a gun problem. Crime, violence, not a gun problem. And in fact, the jihadi terror attack that took place in California, that was not just crime. That was jihadi terrorism. And their answer is, instead of responding to terrorists who are doing this, instead of bombing the hell out of ISIS, because they have no intention of actually attacking ISIS, instead of doing these things, what they are doing is now coming after the American people. This doesn't make any sense. We were attacked, and now you're talking about taking our rights away. This is beyond illogical. This is contemptuous. This is lawless. This is illogical, and we have to stand up against this. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to pick up with the rest of this segment here. We're going to talk about this article about gun sales spiking, and I have some other articles that I want to get to here, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, gang. We're back. So, a lot of stuff going on here. Let's go ahead and just pick right up where we left off. Thanks to Obama trying to do his latest gun grab attempt by removing the gun rights of people on terrorist watch lists. Again, there's over 680,000 people on the terrorist watch lists, and we have no way of knowing anything about it. So, not a transparent process. But anyway, flowing like water, Obama's speech causes gun sales to spike. Gun and ammunition sales, by the way, this is the latest article on bearingarms.com. This is, let's see, this was written by Bob Owens. Okay, so gun and ammunition sales have been spiking in Wake County following President Obama's Sunday primetime address and the mass shooting in San Bernardino, California last week that left 14 people dead. Clay Osley, the owner of Fuqua, I'm sorry if I slaughtered that, Fuqua Gun and Gold, said shoppers are not just checking items off their Christmas list, they are stocking up in anticipation that gun laws will tighten. We saw an influx of customers coming in purchasing in fear of what Obama was going to say. Osley said he started work at 4 a.m. Monday morning to replenish the stock, with Obama making the statement that he wants to change legislation, get it to where it's harder for the public to purchase high-capacity firearms. Folks are going to start running to get what they can, he said. The heaviest hitters have been ammunition and high-capacity magazines. The AR mags, the AK mags, they've been flowing out of here like water. So, I mean, that's really no surprise, right? I mean, we already know that President Obama is trying to make it harder for people to get guns. He said statements like this last week.
We're going to have to, I think, search ourselves as a society to make sure that we can take basic steps that would make it harder, not possible, but harder for individuals to get access to weapons.
So, yeah, that's exactly what the U.S. Constitution, the Second Amendment says. It shall be extremely difficult but not impossible for a militia to bear arms, and militias are an outdated, antiquated thing, so no individual shall ever possess a firearm. No, that's not what the Second Amendment says. It says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not that, it's okay to limit this, just don't make it impossible for them to get a gun. No. Again, post-constitutional era, we no longer live underneath the protection of the Constitution. You should just accept that, understand that fact. We no longer have the protection of the Constitution, and we need to work to get back to a more constitutional framework. I mean, I don't think we're going to get there as far as under the current system, because this is poised to crash. We are going to see a crash, and things are going to change. According to, nytimes.com, NewYorkTimes.com, article by Kevin Granville, it's titled, Why December is Looking Likelier for the Fed to Raise Interest Rates. We were just talking with Dave from the XR22report.com. Again, XR22report.com. Check him out. It's got a lot of good info on there. Anyway, this article is talking about how December is looking like it's going to be the month where they're going to the Federal Reserve is going to raise these interest rates. And as I said, I made that prediction before. Here are a few dominoes that have yet to fall. The Federal Reserve will raise the interest rates, which is slowly going to cause the housing and stock markets to collapse. Second one, America will be attacked again by ISIS, but the attack will be bigger, and it will be blamed for causing the economic collapse. We're talking about a massive scale attack, something 9/11 style, very likely bigger, and coordinated around the country is my guess. The third one here, there will be calls for boots on the ground in Syria to destroy ISIS, which will drag us into this regional conflict full swing. And the reason why is because most Americans are completely uninformed about what's going on in Syria. Most Americans have no idea what's happening, just think that ISIS is bad, and they know nothing else about it. They don't understand that the U.S. government created ISIS. They don't understand that the U.S. government is using ISIS. Now, I don't think that the U.S. government has control over ISIS, but I also understand that they're using them in the same way that if you were to throw a hornet's nest at somebody, those hornets are being used by you to hurt that individual. You don't control and manipulate. You're not a puppeteer pulling the strings of those hornets, but you're responsible for the hornets' actions nonetheless because you threw them at someone. So, the third one, the calls for boots on the ground in Syria. Again, we have opened up the door. We're going to get into this in a moment. I'm going to talk about some of the threats that are going on and some of the reasons why I believe the U.S. government has opened up the door for us to be attacked. This situation in San Bernardino, this was not a hugely isolated, as far as I can tell. My summation of this is that this was not a hugely coordinated ISIS attack. I think that this was more of a homegrown radicalization within the cause of Islam. This person associated himself with the Islamic State and radicalized himself. Maybe there was some small coordination between groups, but I don't think this was quite the scale of what ISIS would be planning to do here. I think this was more of just somebody who got radicalized here at home. And when the big attack happens, it's going to be economy killing. And that is what they're going to blame the collapse on. The collapse that they're controlling, the collapse that they're instigating through raising these interest rates. And they know that this system is so artificially inflated because they pumped through QE 1, 2, 3, 45, 900. This is the QE program, quantitative easing, has been pumping billions and billions and billions of dollars into the stock market per month. Per month. It's artificially propping this up. And what is that doing? What is that? Why are they pumping so much money into the stock market? Well, from what I understand, and granted, I'm no expert. I've just got a computer and an internet access, and I'm able to do some research. From what I can tell, the pumping of money into the stock market is allowing investors to pull out. That way, there's not a huge drop in the stock market, causing panic and causing other investors, the marginal investors, to drop out. But the big ones are able to slowly, coordinated with the government, with these QE programs, to pull out their money and eliminate their risk. So these investors are leaving the U.S. stock market, and what is being replaced is U.S. tax dollars artificially stimulating and propping this thing up, creating a bubble that once the federal government stops pumping money into the stock market, it will collapse. Additionally, when they do this, as well as increasing the interest rate, it will collapse the stock market, housing market, auto loan market. All of these things will come tumbling down because they're artificially propped up with U.S. tax dollars. So, when we're attacked, the economy will crash. The economy crash will be blamed on Syria, or will be blamed on ISIS in Syria, and that you'll hear all these rallying calls for us to wrap ourselves in the flag and get our butts over to Syria. A lot of people will be talking about no-fly zones. A lot of people will be talking about boots on the ground. Oppose all of these. These are methods to get us in a nuclear war with Russia. I have never been more serious about this. This is the most important issue of our time. Ladies and gentlemen, oppose any boots on the ground or no-fly list in Syria. Anybody who's calling for either one of those, boots on the ground or a no-fly zone, they are calling for a war with Russia. Now, it's not, maybe they don't even know what they're saying, but it will lead us to a war with Russia. Russia is not going to allow us to overthrow Assad. Russia has proven that their resolve to get Assad back in power, to keep Assad in power, to destroy ISIS and the U.S.-backed rebels is strong. Russia will not allow us to back them up. And again, you have to understand the mentality of Russians. Understand where they're coming from. Now, these people live in Russia. This place is freaking cold. This place is very cold. Russians like to consider themselves, tough people, tough guys. And Putin is a tough man. All right? He's one of the strong men there. He's former KGB. This guy's smart. He's not necessarily a good guy, but he's not necessarily an evil supervillain either. Man, I can't speak. Either he very well could. He could become evil. He could start doing things that are wrong, and he very well has been doing some things that are wrong. Look at the annexation of Crimea. He's not exactly a good guy, but he's not the worst guy in the world. Just like our government, some people in our government aren't so terrible, but the government in general, pretty bad. They're doing some pretty bad things. So my fourth prediction here is that tensions between Russia and America/NATO will continue to increase as we are on the ground in Syria, as we have a no-fly zone. These will eventually lead us into World War III as the U.S. backs Russia into a corner because, again, they believe in strength. And they're already there. Russia's already there. They got Spetsnaz on the ground training people and doing special operations in Syria. They're already there. They're committed to their action in Syria, and they have a vested interest in Syria. So let's move into the next feature topic here, and let's talk about the escalating situation in Syria, tensions on the ground between Russia and Turkey. And let's first start out with a good article I have here on Syrian developments here. There's more tensions now happening between Turkey and Russia, and I believe that this is Russia's attempt to show that they are, let's see, how do I word this? They are taking a cautious stance. They're not overreacting. They're trying to portray Russia as reserved and Turkey as reactionary. So what happened? I believe this was today. Russia fired a warning shot. A Russian warship fired a warning shot at a Turkish boating vessel. So anyway, that looks like my article here crashed. I'm going to go ahead and I'll Google this one and find another article because that one did not work here. Russia warship. Okay. No, that's the same article. Dang. Anyway, so basically Russia fired a warning shot. I already read this article, so I'll just go off my memory here. Russia fired a warning shot at this Turkish vessel. Basically, it was about 600 meters away. Now, I want you to think about this. All right, they were claiming that there was going to be some huge crash that was about to happen, and they fired. They gave several radio calls to this vessel, this Turkish vessel. And it did not change course. They did visual signals. It did not change course. Then they fired the warning shot, and it changed course. This is a fishing vessel. I don't know if this has government affiliation or not, or if it was a private fishing vessel that was Turkish. But anyway, 600 meters away. Now, Russia's saying that they prevented some huge international incident by shooting across the bow, giving a warning shot to this fishing vessel because they were on course to crash into each other. And first of all, I don't necessarily believe that this was as Russia is calling it. They call everything a provocation. This is a provocation. That's a provocation. Well, they're calling this a provocation by Turkey as well, and I think they're just looking for an opportunity to make themselves out to look like the good guys. Again, I don't think that they're good, and I don't think that they're evil. They're not Nazi Germany, folks. They're not. They are a very oppressive government, and governments in general just should not be trusted. You should certainly not trust foreign governments, and I definitely don't trust our own government, and I don't think you should either. So anyway, they're attempting to show that they are restrained and that they're not seeking to instigate or provocate a situation. But Turkey has continued to show provocations, as they like to say. So Russia will say that all the time. They talk about American provocations. They talk about Turkish provocations. They talk about all sorts of provocations. So anyway, let's see here. What else we got? We got a few other stories here. Let me go. Let's put a pause on this. And I really want to get to a very important topic here that we have to talk about, because this is the utmost important issue of our time, of this election right now. And I was doing some research. I'm trying to find out where these candidates stand on a Syrian no-fly zone. If you think that I don't know how much you value my opinion or not here, gang. If you think that I'm wrong about what's going on in Syria, if you think that I'm wrong, that our government wants to get us in Syria, again, as you heard from Dave from X22 Report, he was talking about our involvement to try to drag us into the Syrian civil war, which we created and is in fact not a civil war at all. First of all, we created the power vacuum in Iraq by withdrawing. We did that. We gave guns in Benghazi to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. All right, that's who we gave the guns to, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and that doesn't make any sense. That's why we did it. We did it surreptitiously, but we knew that doing that, they would take those guns and go over to Syria and start a civil war. Again, this isn't a civil war, as Assad is saying. Assad's saying that this is a terrorist uprising. That's what it is. I mean, and it's a terrorist uprising backed and funded and armed by the U.S. government in order to get us in Syria. So what did we do? We drew a red line in the sand that says if Assad uses chemical weapons, we're going to go over there and mess him up. And then we made sure that the U.S.-backed rebels used chemical weapons. The Free Syrian Army is the ones that are apparently allegedly responsible for this. Nothing happens. What's going on with it? Any charges? Any international tribunals coming together to put America in jail, our leadership in jail for that? No. And even if they are, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? They don't have no international organization, first of all, has the authority to come after our leaders or the power to come after our leaders. So we gave the U.S. rebels either somehow, and I don't know if maybe they came from Saddam Hussein, because we know that we gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons that he used against the Kurds. So when we went in and looked for chemical weapons, they were gone. Did they go over into Syria? Were they given to the Syrian rebels? I don't know. But Syrian rebels have chemical weapons. And then President Obama is trying to get us, again, these are Syrian rebels that are backed by the United States government. They use the chemical weapons, and we use as an excuse to send in ground troops in Syria. Well, we stopped President Obama in his tracks. We said, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. So they go back to the drawing board. They have to get Assad out of there. And we're going to get to the reasons behind that in a moment. Why is it so important to get Assad out of power? Why would they give guns to terrorists to do this? Why would they do all of this? This doesn't make any sense. They're actively going against American interests. Well, first of all, the situation with them trying to leave the door open to get us attacked is I honestly believe this is an attempt from our government to open this us wide open to get attacked, and then they're going to use that as an excuse for us to send boots on the ground. They failed earlier with the chemical weapons excuse to get us in there, and now they're trying to use an attack on U.S. soil to get us all spun up, and they're going to kill two birds with one stone because they're going to blame the attack on the economic collapse. So let's go through the candidates. This is the most important issue. If you don't care about politics at all, and you don't want to know anything about it, first of all, I don't know why you're listening to this show, but second of all, you need to know about this issue. You need to talk to your friends. You need to talk to your family. You need to talk to the left-wing liberals that are out there, because these are the people that will need to oppose the war movement. The anti-war movement, which is already on the left, they need to wake up. They have a warmongering president in office that claims that he's stopping wars, but he's really starting wars. He's really funding terrorists. He's really putting America at risk. So let's go on the GOP side. I want to talk about which candidates are going to bring us further toward the abyss. Well, first one, Jeb Bush. He supports a no-fly zone. He wants to enforce a no-fly zone and will stop the regime bombing raids that kill helpless citizens. Bush continued to advocate for no-fly zones after Russia began its airstrikes in Syria, suggesting the United States should not be fearful of confronting Russia. So I think we should be fearful of confronting Russia. First of all, they have nuclear weapons. In addition, as I've mentioned on previous episodes, we could not win a Cold War with Russia like we did before. It could not happen because we are already teetering on the brink of economic collapse. We can't afford to spin Russia into oblivion like we did last time. So that was Jeb Bush. So he supports a no-fly zone, which again, that is supporting boots on the ground. In order to have a no-fly zone, you have to have some kind of boots on the ground to establish and secure the ground where these planes will be kept. You have to have someone on the ground. So no-fly zones are boots on the ground. Don't get confused with the language. We're not just going to have planes flying in the air. We got to have someone on the ground somewhere for these planes to land. Anyway, and remember, boots on the ground and no-fly zone, that means that we're going to end up escalating a situation with all these people in this regional conflict that will lead us into a World War III scenario with Russia. And I have the military strength of the United States and Russia, and I want to give a little bit of information on that. I'll do that a little later. But let's continue down the list. Ben Carson. He supports a no-fly zone. We need to stand our ground with the airspace. I would establish a no-fly zone along the border with Turkey. In no way would I back off. He said this on October 8, 2015. Mr. Carson has said the United States should counter efforts by President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia to expand his influence, saying that the United States is only reacting when somebody does something. Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey, he supports a no-fly zone. He says, my first phone call would be to Vladimir, and I'd say to him, listen, we're enforcing this no-fly zone, referring to Mr. President Vladimir Putin of Russia. This was said October 12, 2015. Mr. Christie has taken a particularly aggressive stance towards Syria, saying that he would shoot down Russian warplanes that violate the no-fly zone. These guys are going to get us in World War III. This is madness. And it shows how much madness this is because Hillary Clinton also supports a no-fly zone. So keep in mind, this is a policy that both Republicans and Democrats are saying. it's probably a bad thing. It's probably not a good idea when we start lining ourselves up with this situation, with going into war. You can start to see interests starting to form. And if you're a New World Order conspiracy type, all right, I would argue that anybody who supports a no-fly zone, you should be questioning whether or not they're trying to fling us into this world war. You should be questioning their intentions, because what is our interest in the Middle East? Oil. That's it. We don't care how these people are killing each other. In fact, this is a artificial civil war. This is not a real civil war. Again, as Dave from the X22 report just said, the 87 to 89% of Syrians voted for Assad in the last election. And now we're supposed to believe that suddenly some uprising from the people of Syria happened, and now there's a civil war when 87 to 89% of the people voted for him. Now, you could question the legitimacy of that election, I suppose, but where's your evidence? What are you talking about? What happened? So anyway, Hillary Clinton, she supports the no-fly zone. I would personally be advocating for a no-fly zone and humanitarian corridors to try to stop the carnage on the ground and from the air. Ms. Clinton split with President Obama by voicing support for a no-fly zone, a proposal that the White House has repeatedly rejected. During her time as Secretary of State, she urged a more aggressive approach to Syria. Now we have Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, on here, New York Times, they've got him listed as no position. However, I would be a little bit questionable about this. I would say this would be opposing it. Ted Cruz says, "Look, we have no business sticking our nose in that civil war." Contrasting his approach with that of Hillary Rodham Clinton, a number of his Republican rivals, Mr. Cruz has called for focusing on defeating the Islamic State rather than trying to push out President Bashar al-Assad of Syria. I would say that would be opposing a no-fly zone, because he says we have no business sticking our nose in that civil war. What our interest is as Mr. Cruz has said, that we need to defeat the Islamic State. But again, we can't trust our government to do that because they funded, created, and armed the Islamic State. So, all right, let's see here. And by the way, earlier I mentioned that we created the power vacuum with the Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and we gave Al-Qaeda in Iraq guns in Benghazi. That's what we were running guns. CIA was running guns to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Guess what Al-Qaeda in Iraq turned to? I don't think I mentioned this before. What did Al-Qaeda in Iraq turn into? ISIS. We literally gave those guns to ISIS. And because we pulled out and we destabilized Iraq, ISIS, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, then became ISIS, but they collected all of the military technology that was left behind by the Iraqi army when they ran away. So they got tanks, they got armored vehicles, they got all sorts of crap. They got weapons that have only been dropped once. Anyway, so back to this list. Carly Fiorina. She supports a no-fly zone. She says this is a tricky maneuver. It's a dangerous maneuver, but it's a maneuver that we must undertake. Ms. Fiorina called for a no-fly zone to protect rebel forces that are opposing President Assad. She said that such a move would show the Russians that they do not get to move into the Middle East and become the dominant outside power. Lindsey Graham, he says that I don't know if there's anybody left to train, but a no-fly zone would be a great relief to the Syrian people. I'm not even going to read more about Lindsey Graham because he's a joke. John Kasich, this guy's a joke as well, but he also supports a no-fly zone. Now, he says, now is the time for the United States to provide the moral leadership that it has failed so far to provide. Mr. Kasich called for the creation of sanctuary areas protected by no-fly zones in order to prevent further escalation and suffering by civilians and refugees. Okay, so Martin O'Malley, he's a Democrat. He opposes this. He has no chance of getting elected. I'm not even going to bother, but yeah, he opposes a no-fly zone. Rand Paul, he opposes setting up a no-fly zone. He says it's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for confrontation. Mr. Paul has assailed the idea of a no-fly zone, predicting it could lead to World War III by causing a confrontation between the United States and Russia. Gee, what have I been saying this whole time? Now, many of you out there, some of you, my listeners, may be supportive of this man. I will just warn you that he is not who you think he is. He is an establishment candidate, and maybe you are an establishment person, but I believe that the establishment is actively acting against the interest of this country and the party. So Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Marco Rubio. He supports a no-fly zone. He says the United States should work with our allies, both Arab and European, to impose a no-fly zone over parts of Syria. Mr. Rubio called for no-fly zones to protect Syrian civilians from bombs dropped by President Assad's Air Force. Again, the people that we're talking about protecting are the U.S.-backed rebels. That's the only people that we care about protecting. Specifically, we will allow ISIS to grow, and we're not going to actually do anything to stop them. The bombing that we're doing over there is a joke. We have hundreds of ISIS targets that we know about that we're not bombing. Again, the president is calling back 70% of raids conducted on, bombing raids conducted on ISIS territory, even when there's provable no collateral damage that would happen. He's calling it back. We're not serious about destroying ISIS because we created ISIS. In addition, there's rumors now that there's a CIA training facility for jihadi terrorists in ISIS in Jordan. So we're sending these guys into Jordan to be trained by the CIA to go up to Syria to fight. And again, we're not serious. We can't trust our government to fight ISIS because our government is using ISIS. Bernie Sanders, he opposes a no-fly zone. Mr. Sanders has deep reluctance to using military force and has said that Muslim nations need to take the lead in fighting the Islamic State. Donald Trump, he apparently has no position. He says, this does not sound like me very much, but I want to sit back and I want to see what happens. Mr. Trump has said he likes the idea of a safe zone becoming established in Syria, but he has questioned the idea of supporting rebels who oppose President Assad, and he has welcomed the idea of Russians attacking the Islamic State. So we're going to get into this here some more. We got to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to pick up on the other side. So don't go anywhere, gang. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, we're back. Whew, I got to tell you, it is hot in this room here. I broadcast from a room in my home, and it gets hot in this room with the door closed and everything. I'm in here sweating. Yeah, I got sweat rolling down my forehead. All this for you guys. I want this show to continue. We're in the overdrive hour. We've been in the overdrive hour for 33 minutes here, and I'm still pushing forward. We're still going to continue this. I don't care how sweaty I get. I'm over here sweating like James Gandolfini. It doesn't matter. It don't matter. So, all right, we got a lot of stuff here. I talked about, again, these are the positions of the candidates running in the race right now. Out of these candidates, Jeb Bush supports a no-fly zone. Ben Carson supports it. Chris Christie supports it. Hillary Clinton supports it. Ted Cruz, they have on the New York Times, he doesn't support it, that he has no position. But I would argue that he's saying here that he does not support it. He says we have no business sticking our nose in that civil war. Carly Fiorina, she supports the no-fly zone. Lindsey Graham supports it. John Kasich. Martin O'Malley opposes it, but stands no chance of getting elected against Hillary Clinton in the primary. Rand Paul, that was a Freudian slip. He opposes setting up a no-fly zone. He's one of the only people that says it's a recipe for confrontation that could lead us into World War III. He's the only person that's saying that. Marco Rubio supports a no-fly zone. You need to know this about Marco. It is not, if you're talking about conservative principles, he's not being conservative. First of all, he's terrible on immigration. He's part of the Gang of 8, I believe it was, that was trying to get amnesty for illegal immigrants. So he's got already problematic stuff when it comes to his background there. He's painting himself out to be a Tea Party candidate, which in fact he was in the past, but he's not very Tea Party in principle. But I would not say that it is incredibly conservative for us to put American lives in jeopardy, boots on the ground, in order to establish a no-fly zone, in order to protect Syrian people, all right, who are in fact, the people that we're there supporting are in fact U.S.-backed rebels who we have armed and trained in order to overthrow a sovereign nation, Assad, who was recently elected in a margin of 87 to 89% by his own people. You know, and we're using ISIS to attack him as well. So, again, I don't think it's very conservative of Marco to support this no-fly zone. And he's the one I'm really sticking with here because everybody seems to be thinking that it's going to be between Marco, Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump. And I'm just saying, Marco, if it's Marco for president or Hillary, we're screwed. We're screwed because Marco supports going into Syria and setting up a no-fly. This is the issue. This is the most important issue. All of your social issues, I'm all for legalization of marijuana, legalize drugs, all that stuff. I'm all for gun rights, all this. Nothing else matters right now. Syria is the most important issue because if we go into Syria, it's over. That's it. That's all she wrote. If we have boots on the ground in Syria, it's going to lead us to a World War III scenario, and it's over. The way of life that we have now will be over, and we're going to hit a point of no return where we cannot go back. We can't. I mean, the economy is going to crash. We're going to be screwed as it is. But wouldn't it be a little better of a situation if we just have no money and we're broke and starving and we're a third world country? Wouldn't that be better than if we're all of that in addition to being nuked by Russia? Wouldn't that be a better situation? And again, do you really trust your government to attack ISIS? Because they're going to spool us up, try to get us to go into Russia. I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip as well. Try to get us to go into Syria in order to take the fight to Russia, which we could be doing already. First of all, we armed them. You cannot trust your government to take out a target that they're actively using for their own ends. So let's talk about those ends. This is by far the most important conversation that I'm going to have with you. Why are we interested in what's going on in Syria? Well, there is a pipeline that has been discussed with the Saudis. So the Saudis, basically, they're trying to get Syria overthrown, get the government of Syria out of it. And first of all, you have to understand the Sunni-Shia split, all right? Essentially, Sunnis and Shias hate each other. They're both Muslims, but they hate each other. And it's essentially an ideological split based on who they believe the leadership role of Islam fell to after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. One side believed that the Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law should have gotten the leadership position. The next side believed that the prophets surrounding, the apostles surrounding the Prophet, his closest followers, were the ones that should have carried the torch. But I digress. The point is that there's a huge split. So 80-90% of Muslims are Sunnis, and the rest are basically Shia. So after World War II, the United Nations came in and they started carving out little dictatorships over there to try to split up the power because they didn't want too much power falling into one side. If they can create a instability in this region, have them fighting amongst each other, it would prevent them from getting too much power and becoming a real problem, and also harder to control and manipulate. Because if they're easier to manipulate, then you can get them to, you can coerce them, you can twist their arm into only trading their oil in the US Petrol Dollar. We were talking about this earlier. So, why do the United States and Saudi Arabia, why do they want Assad out of power? Well, Assad is a Shia. So automatically the Sunnis don't like him, and Saudi Arabia is a Sunni majority country. Their leaders are Sunnis. Their royalty over there, they're Sunnis. So they absolutely hate Assad because he is a Shia. He's an Alawite, which is a sect, a religious variant of Shiaism. So he automatically doesn't like them. But then in addition, it's going against, because Saudi's wanting to get a pipeline that will go north into Syria, go from Syria into Turkey, and provide oil to Europe from Saudi. This is a direct pipeline coming from the Middle East into Europe. This would be problematic for Russia because Russia has that pipeline we've discussed several times in the past. Russia has a pipeline going from them, has a shoot-off going into China, but then the primary shoot-off is going into Europe. So Russia, and again, Reagan warned us about this pipeline, saying that it would give too much control from Russia. Russia can cut off the oil supply and really twist people's arms and coerce them, just like they're doing right now. By the way, with Turkey, they've sanctioned Turkey for shooting down their jet. Shooting down their jet, that whole skirmish on the Turkish border that we talked about a few episodes back, where Turkey shot down a Russian jet for supposedly crossing their airspace for 17 seconds or so. And again, that was a immediate display of weakness or a provocation, depending on how you look at it. I'm sure Putin's saying provocation, but what I'm saying, it was a sign of weakness because, number one, Turkey, there was obviously no reason to think that Russia was bombing or going to harm Turkey. They were cutting across a corner of their airspace. The moment they entered, they were actually in the process of leaving as well, because if you continue to straight line, 17 seconds, they're out of the airspace. Russia's denying that they were even in the airspace. They said that they have GPS data that shows them through the GPS right on the border. So it's possible that they weren't even within Turkish airspace. Who are you going to believe? I don't know. I don't believe any of these damn governments anyway. So the point is that Turkey shot down, stupidly, a Russian jet. And now Russia's putting sanctions on them and saying, oh, we're going to control how much oil you get from us. We're going to control how many people Russians come to Turkey for tourism. We're going to put all these restrictions on you. And they're heightening tension. They're saying, oh, we're not going to have a good relationship with Turkey anymore. Sound like Count Dracula there. Sorry about that, gang. Anyway, so Saudis are trying to get rid of Assad because Assad said, I'm not going to allow this pipeline to come up here because it will be detrimental to Russian interest. And he's a Russian ally. He's not going to do something against his Russian allies' interest, just like we would expect Saudi to not do something against our interest. However, who knows what's going on over there? Who knows what interest they're really looking out for? I'm sure it's only their interest. And by the way, there's news, too, that Saudi has been helping ISIS. So I'm looking at an article right now on theindependent.co.uk. It's titled Iraq Crisis, How Saudi Arabia Helped ISIS Take Over the North of the Country. A speech by an ex-MI6 boss hints at a plan going back over a decade in some areas. Being Shia is akin to being a Jew in Nazi Germany. So basically, what this article is laying out is this idea that the Sunnis, in running the government in Saudi Arabia, can use the Sunnis of ISIS to overthrow the government of Assad. Again, the same way that the United States is doing this. So there's a potential they're colluding together to do this, or maybe they each have their own interests. Regardless, the Saudi Arabian government, they are playing a very dangerous game because they're destabilizing their regions here, and they've been having their own problems keeping control of their own people. And the fact is, ISIS does not believe in man-made law. They believe in the literal interpretation of the Sharia law out of the Quran and the Hadith and even the Surah, if that's how you pronounce it. I think I'm still doing my research on all this, gang. So the point is that ISIS will come out against Saudi Arabia because they're trying to expand the caliphate and they want to take over all of the Muslim territory first and then expand outward. And we can get into a lot of other stuff on their expansion, but I'll digress for now. Anyway, so Saudi is actually going to. I'm making a prediction now. You're going to see ISIS enter Saudi Arabia. ISIS will start taking over Saudi Arabian territory eventually. This will be a while. This will probably be after, if they succeed in toppling the Assad regime, Saudi Arabia will be next. So Jordan, this will spread. It will start to cascade against the Middle East. Then the refugees in Europe that are going up north there's a population battle going on. They're talking about trying to. These are the Muslims who are actually refugees and immigrating to these countries. They're talking about how they're going to win the population war. They're going to outnumber the Europeans. It's already starting to happen in places over there. And they're going to do this by taking multiple wives, having multiple children with multiple wives, and they're going to outnumber the Europeans. Therefore, they can change the political spectrum because they'll have the numbers. This is pretty dangerous. I mean, this is very crazy. So the threat that the radical Islam and the Islamic State is actually posing to the rest of the world is a very real threat. And our government is feeding into it. The Saudis are feeding into it, all because of oil. All because of oil. And honestly, I don't believe that the powers that be, this is the end game. Again, I think they want us in a World War II or World War III type scenario where we're throwing all of our liberties at the feet of the government's altar. You know, they're trying to set up a situation where we have so much fear. We have a big geopolitical enemy that we end up in a nuclear war, devastates the population here and around the world, and then suddenly the rest of the world comes together and says, never again will we allow this kind of thing to happen. We must create a global government, and with that global government, they're just going to eliminate all sovereignty of these independent nations. Every country around the world will be subject to the global government. So, first, this situation here, it's very concerning because, again, I don't know how many times I can bang this drum here, but our government created ISIS. They funded ISIS. They destabilized Iraq, created a power vacuum when they pulled out. They gave guns to Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and it destabilized Syria because Al-Qaeda in Iraq came over to Syria, turned into ISIS, started calling themselves the Islamic State. Then they created a so-called civil war in Syria, and we tried to use the civil war in Syria as an excuse to go into Syria because the Syrian rebels used chemical weapons. And again, where did they get those from? Very likely the chemical weapons that we provided Saddam Hussein that we couldn't find when we went into Iraq. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I know that it just is very suspect. Very suspect. All the data seems to say that the U.S.-backed rebels are the ones that did the chemical attacks, and our government's trying to gin us up and tried to get us in 2013 to go into Syria. Well, we stopped them then, and now they realize they need something bigger. So they're leaving us vulnerable here. And let's move over here to some of these potential terrorist attacks. So the first thing I want to actually talk about here, gang, is one of the most concerning. This is judicialwatch.org. Middle Eastern men were arrested near the Mexican border with steel cylinders. And this is an article dated December 4th, 2015. 5 young Middle Eastern men were apprehended by the U.S. Border Patrol this week in Arizona, in an Arizona town situated about 30 miles from the Mexican border. So they were actually in America. They were 30 miles from the Mexican border. Law enforcement and other sources told Judicial Watch. Border Patrol agents spotted the men crossing a ranch property in the vicinity of Amando, which is located about 35 miles south of Tucson and has a population of 275. 2 Middle Eastern men were carrying stainless steel cylinders in backpacks, Judicial Watch sources say, alarming Border Patrol officials enough to call the Department of Homeland Security for backup. A multitude of federal agents descended on the property, and the 2 men carrying the canisters were believed to be taken into custody by the FBI. So one of the reasons why this is a concern is because steel cylinders, could be alluding to some kind of biochemical attack that's coming through. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, but maybe not. One of the things that we also need to discuss here is another article about from Judicial Watch, just talking about ISIS camps that are only a few miles from Texas, and this has been confirmed not from our government, but from the Mexican authorities. So ISIS is operating a camp just a few miles from El Paso, Texas, according to Judicial Watch sources that include a Mexican Army field grade officer and a Mexican federal police inspector. The exact location of where the terrorist group has established its base is around 8 miles from the U.S. border in an area known as Anapra, situated just west of Ciudad Juarez, if I said that right, Ciudad, I said that wrong. Ciudad Juarez, in the Mexican state of Chihuahua. I can't say these things. Anyway, another ISIS cell to the west of Ciudad Juarez in Puerto Palmas targets the New Mexico towns of Columbus and Deming for easy access to the United States. The same knowledgeable sources confirmed. So we have ISIS camps right on our border, only a few miles away from our border. And, our government is more concerned about putting our own citizens on terror watch lists and removing their right to keep and bear arms. Okay, so we got another story of potential situations here. This is a local news story, 12news.com. It's a story of two Middle Eastern men arrested along the Mexican border. Let's see here. That story is having some trouble loading, so we'll go to the next one here. Oh, this is one of the most concerning ones that I wanted to talk to you guys about. There were multiple huge purchases of cell phones at 3 Missouri Walmarts, which is raising FBI suspicions. In less than a week, law enforcement agencies, again, this is Fox4KC.com, article dated December 9th, 2015. Andrew Lynch is the author. In less than a week, law enforcement agencies in 3 different Missouri cities have investigated the purchase of large quantities of cell phones at Walmart stores. In 2 cases, the Federal Bureau of Investigation was contacted last Saturday. KSPR reports that police were called to Lebanon, Missouri Walmart when 2 men purchased about 60 cell phones early in the morning. Police tell KSPR that terrorists can use cell phones as bomb detonators in addition to using them for communication and can be hard to track if prepaid. KSPR says the men weren't arrested because police say they hadn't technically done anything wrong. However, the Laclede County Sheriff's Office says it contacted the FBI. So all of this happens, and in the same town, a very large quantity of propane tanks have been stolen. So, again, I'm not saying that all of these are, one potential terrorist threat. I'm not saying that this is for sure going to happen. All I'm saying is that, look, we have a wide open border to the south, and moreover, we are allowing terrorists to enter into our country on visas. Just look at the California shooter. She was brought in here on a visa, a fiancé visa. She was supposedly vetted properly. Now, one of the things that we must discuss if we're talking about the vetting process and if we're talking about watch lists is the fact that the name Tashfeen Malik is obviously a fake name. That's the name of the wife, the female shooter who came in on the fiancé visa. Tashfeen Malik is a nom de guerre for a Muslim terrorist from the annals of Muslim history. It's King Tashfeen. Also, he's known to Muslims by Tashfeen Malik al-Mahadin in English, Tashfeen, King of the Unitarians, essentially, and the conqueror of the West. The history stems from Yusuf ibn Tashfin led the Muslim forces in the Battle of Zalaka in Sagragas. Again, I suck at these names, and I apologize for that, but hey, I'm just trying to get the information out. He came to Andalusia, I think, from Morocco, to help the Muslims fight against Alfonso VI, eventually achieving victory and allowing the Muslims to remain in Spain for centuries. The battle has been symbolic for Muslim victory against the Christians. So, first of all, Tashfeen is a male name. And Malik, from what I understand, means king. This is an obvious fake name that was vetted through the visa process and allowed to come into this country. And our president is talking about opening the floodgates and having thousands of Muslims come into this country, Syrian refugees come into this country from this active hotbed of jihadi terrorism. from this area, and we already know that the process to actually vet these people is failing. We have a wide open southern border. First of all, we're letting people come in on visas like crazy, and most of these people who are terrorists are overstaying their visas. They're already here, and we're not doing anything about getting them out, and we're talking about bringing more in. And then even the fact of bringing more in, there's a conversation that needs to be had about assimilation. We should not, and I will repeat this, because I'm not an open borders activist. I would love the idea of open borders if the government didn't have the authority to create monopolies through colluding with the corporate interests, if the government didn't have any authority whatsoever other than to just resolve interstate disputes. If the government was limited in that fashion, then yeah, I would be fine with open borders. If we didn't have a welfare state, I would be fine with open borders. But the problem is, we do have all of these things. The government does have the power to restrict your liberty. The government is currently ramping up the police state. And the fact is, our constitutional rights are being stripped away little by little, slowly eroding away. And the fact is that many of these Muslims that are coming in here, they are not interested in becoming American citizens. They are interested in, like the ones that are coming up, from Syria, going into Germany, because Germany is a wealthy country that has a welfare state that they will get money and they'll be able to live off of. Again, I don't have any problems bringing Muslims here who want to assimilate, who want to learn our language, who have a plan on how they're going to get money and produce things, be beneficial to our economy, instead of just taking American jobs. Create American jobs or fill positions that we cannot fill because we do not have people who are skilled enough in those jobs to fill. Like, for example, machinist jobs. There's a shortage here in America of machinists because Americans decided one day that, hey, we're not going to send our children to trade schools and teach them these skills because of American manufacturing, these industries that are collapsing. You saw with the bailouts with GM and all this, Americans aren't wanting to send their kids to manufacturing jobs, primarily because we're losing them in record numbers because of all the regulation surrounding it. So they started sending their kids to school for other things. So now we've got all these openings in these jobs. And now we don't have anybody to fill them. So yeah, bring in people to do that. Bring in entrepreneurs who will create jobs instead of take jobs. That we should be more selective in our process. This is not the world soup kitchen. We have our own rights. We have our own sovereignty. We can control and say who's to come in and who's not. Look, I understand the idea of being humanitarian, but it's ridiculous to be humanitarian at the cost of, first of all, your own country. Because when you bring people into the country who do not want to assimilate, who want to create a population war like what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan, you have a major problem. Why bring people in the country who don't want to be American, who don't value the values that we do, who don't respect the Constitution, who want to implement Sharia law? And by the way, don't think that can't happen, because it's happening in other countries. Right now, there are Islamist vigilantes that are facing trial right now in Europe because they're going around and they're actually trying to enforce religious law. They're the religious police in Europe. Very scary thought, but these people are actually targeting women who aren't wearing full beekeeper chic, who aren't completely dressed in the hijab. Women who are showing their hair, Muslims who aren't Muslim enough are being attacked. Christians are being attacked. Jews are being spat on and assaulted. These are all the things that are happening. Again, this could happen here. All it takes is for the majority of a population to make it happen. And they have the plan. They are currently trying to win the population war in Syria. In Europe, from the Syrian flow, the 800,000 millions of refugees now, roughly. It's roughly 1 million refugees that are flowing in, and they're not even from Syria. Not even all of them are from Syria. It's people exploiting a way to take advantage of the welfare state. There's a whole bunch of other stuff I wanted to get into. We're not going to have time to get into it. I wanted to compare the Russian military strength with the United States. I wanted to talk about a whole slew of other stuff. Rahm Emanuel, how he's losing his grip on Chicago, and the people are trying to kick him out of there because he covered up a police shooting in order to win an election. You guys are going to have to do that research on your own, but just know the world's crazy. It's a crazy world out there. And I really do hope that you guys take the time to educate yourself on these subjects further. Don't just believe me. Check my facts out. Double check me. You know, you need to educate yourself. That's what we need. And not only that, but you have to, especially the situation going on with Syria, guys, you have to talk to your friends and your family. You have to let them know that they need to oppose. And I don't care what happens, how many times we get attacked here, we have to prevent them from getting us in Syria, because it will lead us into a direct conflict with Russia, which will lead us into World War III, which only will be bad for us. This will not be good. No good can come from this. We can't trust our government to take the fight to ISIS, because they created ISIS and are using ISIS. They're not serious about defeating ISIS, and they're trying to use ISIS to get us involved in this conflict for their own personal gain. The world's a dangerous place, gang. You're going to have to take steps to protect yourself. The economy's crashing. You need to stock up on your food, get your guns, get your ammo, get your water. We don't have much time left, and I don't want to be a fearmonger. I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to be prepared, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I will be. Anyway, that's all we got for today's show. Really appreciate it. And don't forget to check us out at our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. You can follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. And follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube as well at YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, get on the move.